Chapter 1. Liam. This was my second life. My new name is Liam Sarah Banfield. If I looked into a mirror, the image of a young boy with black hair and purple eyes would gaze back at me. I'm currently 5 years old. One day, while I was playing around in my room, I suddenly recalled all the memories of my previous life. There was a large variety of toys scattered around me. This room is big. The guide said I'd be born into a house of power and nobility. It seems like he kept his promise. Certainly, from what I can recall, I was definitely born into a noble's household. The Banfield House, the intergalactic state known as the Algrind Empire, also known as the Albanian dynasty. In such an empire, I was born into an earl's house that dominates one galaxy. And I was going to be its future lord. No, I was going to be a king that controlled an entire galaxy. He kept his promise. I could feel a smile creeping up my face. I didn't know what I was going to be reincarnated as. But this is better than I could have ever imagined. If they did this expecting that I was going to become a good person, then they have gravely mistaken their prospects. After all, I don't plan to be a good person this time. This time, I'm aiming to be a great evil lord. Though there are a few problems, like what does an evil lord even do? In dramas, they'd oppress the people and stuff, but what should I do? Other ideas that come to mind include alcohol, women, and gambling maybe. In any case, should I just aim to feast on this life's delicacies? That doesn't really give off the image of an evil lord. Should I imitate corrupt politicians and waste taxes while taking bribes? Well, things should be fine as long as I live as I like. In any case, this seems like a lot of fun. Huh? Something had fallen on my head. It was a letter. It was carefully sealed. And when opened, I was surprised to see that it was from the guide. Why didn't he just come here himself? The answer to my question was written in the letter. It said he was sending me a congratulations for my successful reincarnation. But at the same time, it was written that, unfortunately, he was a little busy and couldn't come over himself. However, he said he wouldn't just leave me out to dry. The letter said that he'd send over some support to help me soon. Support? While I was hunched over reading, my parents entered into the room along with a servant. Cliff Sarah Banfield. Darcy Sarah Banfield. They walked over to me with smiles and handed over something akin to a glass plate. A document floated up on the glass plate's surface. What was written there was the transfer of titles, territory, and other rights over to me. Why would they suddenly hand something like this over to a child? Father, what is this? Unfortunately, I honestly haven't had much contact with my parents, so I'm actually having a bit of trouble understanding why they're doing this right now. Perhaps noticing my complexion, the man who I wasn't accustomed to calling father started to explain himself. However, the explanation itself was quite outrageous. Liam, happy 5th birthday. My present to you is the Banfield house in its entirety. In its entirety. He just said that he was going to give a 5-year-old child complete custody over his territory and all other assets. Is he insane? That's what I thought, but at the same time I remembered the letter I just read. It had already vanished from my hand, but is this what it meant by sending over support? My mother Darcy then handed over a catalog. This is my present. I'll purchase a maid robot to take care of you. So here, take a look and choose something you like. Darcy wanted to buy me a robot that resembled humans while doubling as a maid. A robot that looks like an actual human, so an android? As I opened up the received catalog, an assortment of images projected out towards me. And not just images, videos and 3D holograms projected into the air, really giving off a futuristic vibe. What is this? Darcy smiled and started to explain how to use it. Just pick a maid that tickles your fancy, so you might as well choose one. That's cute as well. It was almost as if I was choosing a character for a game. And if it's like that, then underneath each android various numbers were displayed, but since I didn't have to worry about the money, I wanted to make sure I got nothing less than the highest specs. In the end, I chose the one with an appearance akin to a Japanese-styled beauty. Her long black hair was tied into a ponytail that flowed all the way down to her back, while her bangs grew longer on the right side rather than her left. Needless to say, I chose one that was well endowed. The description even said that it was fully capable of processing sexual desires if needed. I looked up. Cliff was smiling at me. You really are my child, you have good taste. Oh, I think I like chests because I'm still young. My parents had the warm, teasing smiles they could only show to a child buying a robot with adult functions. It was quite the surreal scene, if I do say so myself. The elderly butler standing behind them, Brian, was sending over looks that seemed to say he had complex feelings about all this. I could feel myself burning up in shame and embarrassment. As I thought, this is quite unusual, isn't it? But now I'm sure. This is probably the support the guide said he'd send over. Putting aside how I was worried about how meddlesome my parents would be, I was afraid of women and how they'd act around me. Women of flesh and blood can't be trusted. So I thought the robot maid was a really nice gift. I'd have no worries about her betraying me. In any case, I ended up choosing the one with the highest specs. Confirming my choices, I set it so that she'd be wearing a classic maid outfit. Mini skirts and such were overkill. I was troubled whether I should set the skirt to be above or below the knees, but in the end I set it below them. Darcy's delight at my choices was just barely noticeable. Hey, you still bought your son a robot made fully capable of processing sexual desires, right? Oh, she's quite pretty. I'm sure that if we left Liam to this robot, he'd be quite safe. I couldn't help but feel discomfort at my parents' attitude. Gathering my courage, I looked up at the two of them and asked, "Are you going somewhere?" Cliff was rubbing his jaw. The Star Empire, I bought a residence in their capital, and we planned to move there. I started to sign the electronic documents that would transfer over the status and territory. Then Darcy showed me another electronic document. "Oh yes, Liam, sign here too please." It was a document that said I'd send them living expenses over at the Star Capital every year. They were giving everything to me while they themselves would live out a simple urban life. They're really pitiful parents. This child of yours is a reincarnated person. It was the ridiculous truth that I already had the mentality of a fully grown man. I don't know what the guide did, but such a loving couple was now handing over their entire lives' status and property to me. What else could I call this if not pitiful? We might not spent the most time together, but it's only natural I'd send over living expenses to a couple that have given me so much. Of course, only my face was smiling. I was about to take everything away from the parents that I wasn't even that close to. Even so, I signed the electronic documents that seemed to push high expectations for my future. A few days later, Liam's parents arrived at the spaceport docks while being protected by an escort. They boarded the private shuttle together, but they were actually sitting apart from one another. First, they'd leave the spaceport on this lavishly decorated shuttle, but from then on it'd be a straight trip over to the Star Capital on an official Empire spacecraft. This was quite the exciting development for a provincial Earl household. While Cliff was reading an electronic newspaper, he opened his mouth and called out to Darcy. They weren't even looking at each other. "You gave him a robot. Are you even aware of your own motherhood?" In contrast, Darcy was drinking tea. There was no love between the two of them. Their relationship was that of two nobles that had a political marriage. He's a child who inherited my genes. My stomach went through many pains just to give birth to him, yet I can't say I feel any real affection towards him. Liam was the product of their two genes combining together. That's all he was to them. As Cliff put his newspaper down on the table, it was Darcy who spoke up this time. "Are you sure it was okay to leave everything over to a 5-year-old? If I say it isn't, are you going to stay? I'm being serious here." Darcy continued after taking another sip of tea. "I would never have married you if I couldn't have this chance at freedom, but I can't help but feel a little guilty forsaking a child who knows nothing. I gave him a robot, so isn't that at least a small mercy?" Cliff was laughing. A nobleman keeping a robot at his side. Hell, no doubt be a laughingstock. "You won't betray me. I can at least trust you in that aspect. But if something happens to that boy, we'll be forced to return here. Can't you see that?" "Don't think about it." Darcy was anxious. "So you're totally fine with this? You have no qualms with pushing a 5-year-old child into a venomous position he's not ready for?" Cliff reached out for some alcohol. He was finally free from it all, and couldn't help but smile at the newfound liberation he felt. "It's not unheard of. There are precedents of others succeeding that young. Besides, we have the permission of the royal court. There are lots of other people doing the same thing, so don't worry. Nowadays, it doesn't really matter who the lord is. Nobody wants to rule over a frontier region like that." The Empire was okay with imposing status and property onto 5-year-olds. But there's a reason for this. The Empire doesn't really want to get involved with the frontiers. As long as there's a proper administrator there, it doesn't really matter if one neglects their duties. For an intergalactic empire, governance was very difficult. Moreover, the Empire has tried to avoid the use of artificial intelligences since its formation. Humanity was once dominated by the very artificial intelligences they created to serve them, and it was the people of the Empire who rose up against that unreasonable force. As a result, the aristocracy couldn't feel at ease when made robots and the like which used said artificial intelligence were nearby. It was the noble society's trend to use it only if necessary, but even then it was undesirable. Darcy looked down towards the spaceport that the shuttle departed from. the planet owned by the Banfield family. A sullen place that was scarcely developed. In addition, it was in massive debt. If he knew about the territory, there's no doubt Liam would be angry. Cliff's drink was probably strong, since his face was now a little redder. I'm pushing my territory to my only child and fleeing to the star capital, a place that no one would be happy to live at. That was the territory of the Banfield family. Banfield Main Estate. An earl at the age of 5, I had become a man who ruled over an entire galaxy. Now I'm one of those in power, or maybe I can call myself a king. In the Empire, there were many houses on the level of the Banfield family. But as long as I was in my own territory, I was the king. An absolute person of power. Brian brought over a report to me, who was sitting in an oversized chair in my father's former office. Liam, your maid robot has arrived. Understood, let her in. As you wish, enter. The door to the office opened, and the maid robot that I saw from the catalog walked inside. Her movements felt completely natural. If I didn't know beforehand, there'd have been no way I would have guessed that she's actually a robot. Once she finally arrived in front of me, she proceeded to curtsy, picking up the ends of her skirt and bowing. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. Master 1, I am your new maid, designated as Amagi. Amagi? That's a Japanese name. There's no particular reason why, she's just named that way. Meanwhile, Brian was standing by nonchalantly. Master, I plan to stay by your side to take care of you. However, it seems that I need to receive maintenance once every week. Maintenance? As I looked over her, maybe Amagi's greetings were over, because she then proceeded after standing up straight. For regular maintenance, I can finish in about 2 hours. That's surprising, I thought it would have taken longer than that. Brian followed up, seeing how it surpassed my expectations. Even if it says maintenance, it's just a body checkup. Cleaning and such, but if there's a serious problem, then we'd have to send it back to the manufacturer for repairs. When you think about it, isn't it amazing that all it needs to maintain itself is just 2 hours of rest every week? In curiosity, I stretched my hands out towards Amagi. She then approached me, and gently lifted me up and proceeded to hug me. I could feel her chest. It was a big chest that'd be impossible for me to grasp with my small hands. It's soft. The softest that every man desires. They weren't too soft, they had a certain toughness to them, and they felt really nice. Brian looked a bit perplexed. Lord Liam, please refrain from doing such things in public. Brian is a man who's been serving the Banfield family for a long time. I've heard that he even managed the house for a while long ago. Though as a butler, it seems he didn't have the skills necessary for managing the house, but he was still a talent that we were reluctant to fire. Even so, I'm the master here. I was already in a ridiculous position, so I decided to abandon my childishness. What I do is my business. Anyways, continue with the report about the territory. Brian proceeded to touch his bracelet, and pictures started floating out around him. They represented the state of the territory in numerical figures and graphs. There was even a map displayed there. I have no idea what any of this means. Brian seemed to have a slightly disappointed atmosphere of as expected, but you couldn't really see it on his face. Still, this is bad. I have no idea what to do. While I was contemplating how much trouble I was in, Amagi, who was still holding me close to her heart, spoke up. I have the functions to act as an assistant governor if necessary. Master, if it's okay, would you like me to assist you? Really? I seriously don't understand any of this, you know? I recommend you enter into an education capsule. During this time, I can temporarily take over the administration rights of the territory. Listening to that, Brian bursts out in protest. Lord Liam, I'm completely against this. Leaving administration to an artificial intelligence is considered taboo in the Empire. Even allowing her to support you like this is questionable enough. But Amagi refuted his claim. There are no such laws in the Empire, that is more of society's mindset of things, but either way I will follow the master's orders. Educational capsules sure were convenient devices. When placed inside the capsule's liquid, the knowledge you desire will automatically start to enter your mind while putting your body through physical therapy. If it were elementary school knowledge, then you'd have to rest inside the capsule for at least half a year. The problem is that you won't actually be able to retain that strengthened body and sharpened mind unless you actually go outside to train and study afterwards. What was the point in living life if you were permanently stuck inside a capsule? Even so, I hear that it's still many times more efficient than studying normally. Looking at these numbers and graphs, I felt once again how incompetent I was. Modern knowledge from my previous life won't help me with domestic affairs here. Brian, prepare the capsule. Amagi, I will leave the territory in your care while I'm inside. Lord Liam, Brian cried out in dissent, but Amaji just responded with, please leave it to me. It looks like my commands are the only ones that shall listen to. Isn't this quite wonderful? I moved to persuade Brian. Brian, look at the facts. I really don't know anything about this, so are you sure it's okay for me to run the territory as I am now? That may be so, but it's only going to be for a little while, if you understand. Then get it ready. In any case, if I can leave the work to someone else, I might as well. Society might denounce artificial intelligences, but that doesn't matter to me. That said, I was still in a bad position. If I just wanted to oppress the people, then I don't think I really had any need to study. However, let's keep this to myself for now. My body is still that of a child. It'd be much harder for me to oppress them if they undermined my ITY due to my age. I continued to think about such things as I stared at Amaji's chest. Chapter 2. The butler and the swordsman Brian, who was a butler for the Banfield family, lamented in his heart as he looked over the mansion. The mansion that the former Banfield Earl renovated was quite unique and wacky, conservatively speaking. Unreservedly speaking, it was in bad taste. Whenever visitors arrived, their faces would wince and they'd avoid topics that had to do with the mansion. There were many of them who had a hard time holding in their laughter. The hallways winded around inefficiently, almost akin to a maze. It wasn't uncommon for newcomers to lose their way. As Brian walked down the corridor, he could overhear some servants chatting in hushed voices. They came from a young man and women, respectively. The young man was actually the gardener, but it seems he left his work to a machine today. He was talking to an unconventional maid whose uniform included a miniskirt rather than a normal one. Isn't it fine? But if we're found out, we'll get into a lot of trouble. It's okay. There are some rooms that aren't in use anymore we can go to. The man grabbed the maid's shoulders and pulled her away somewhere. Even if Brian did run into them, he wouldn't even greet them. While hiring these employees, their appearance had taken precedent over the necessary skills and character needed for their jobs. Brian lamented. For things to fall this far, things were different in the past. When Brian first started serving the Banfield family, the house was orderly and the servants were serious. All of this is because Liam's grandfather had destroyed the territory. He had oppressed the people, and the house's finances were poorly allocated. When the debt swelled, he pushed it all off onto his son Cliff and ran away to the Star Capital. These thoughts depressed Brian as he thought about the Earl house's former glory. Shaking it off, he straightened his spine and approached the office door. He tentatively touched the electronic device mounted on the wall. Lord Liam? It's Brian. A voice came out of the device in response. You may enter. It was an irritated voice that didn't match its young inflection. As the door opened and Brian entered the office, he could see Liam, who had Amaji by his side as he worked. The desk was made for a fully grown man, but the chair was built for a child. Liam's countenance showcased one of a child who was doing their best to hold in their complaints. Next to Liam, Amaji was acting as his secretary as she supported him. Lord Liam, can I get you anything? When Liam stood up from his chair, he joined his hands behind his back. Despite being a child still, it looks like he was doing a splendid job. Brian, I have never left the house before. Did you know that? Yes. Even the rehabilitation exercises we had you do a few days were done inside the mansion. There was no need to go outside. He was hoping that Liam wouldn't notice. What would he think once he realizes that house he lives in was built in such bad taste? Don't you think that this house is too terrible? Brian wanted to agree, but as a butler who served the family, he couldn't badmouth the predecessor's tastes. I think it's a very creative build. Don't patronize me, Liam exclaimed furiously as he stomped the ground with his small body. He sent a look towards Amaji, where she nodded before bringing up a projection on the various renovations and buildings created by both Cliff's generation and his grandfather. Houses, villas, and many buildings were projected around Brian. Irrefutably, it was a horrendous sight. Are they stupid? Are they stupid? Why would they build all these in such strange shapes? They're only making the buildings harder to live in. All of them were bad houses. Some of the houses were given to relatives. However, there weren't any relatives who knew about the Banfield house's financial situation because all of them have already fled to the Star Capital. The fact that Liam was only 5 years old, yet was already the lord of the territory, was no problem either, as none of his relatives opposed it. Because there were no such relatives living in the territory in the first place. As for the knights, many of their successors left to serve other houses, or have completely abandoned the territory altogether with the last generation. It's the people who are left that manage the territory now. The military is more of a militia run by the populace too. If Liam doesn't have any vassals around him, then he can't rely or delegate duties to them. We have a lot of hard work ahead of us. Fleeing to the city, and forcing all their problems onto a child if this was still Lord Alistair's era. There's no way things like this would happen. Liam made a declaration before Brian. Take them all down, this mansion as well. They'll prepare a residence suitable for myself. Brian started to panic. Wait, where do you plan to live in the meantime then? Liam looked a little sad. It doesn't matter, anywhere will do. Amagi followed up perfectly just when I was feeling troubled. Master, please be patient and wait for us to set up a new residence first. Why should I? If we really are going to demolish them all, we should do it bit by bit to reduce maintenance costs. And in the meantime, prepare a suitable house for you, Master. Until then, why don't we first build a small house with the bare minimum of required utilities? How about that? Prepare a house for a minimalist before building a luxurious residence. Brian couldn't help but relax at the proposal. Is this better than shouldering another new debt? No, wouldn't there still be deficits from the dismantling costs? Liam stopped to think for a little before accepting Amagi's plan. True, I should take the time to build my house carefully. Taking that into consideration, do we have enough money to spare? Amagi then started to talk about their upcoming plans. We're a bit under, so I recommend that we reorganize the military forces at the main base. Reorganize the military? Lords and nobles are allowed to have their own personal armies. Liam had only just started working recently and wasn't familiar with the territory. Amagi then presented the data to Liam's admiration. We have 30,000 space battleships? Amagi looked up from the data. We do, but the occupancy rate for them is less than 20%. Out of the 30,000 ships, there were no more than 6,000 in active duty. In addition, they were all old, outdated models. They were no more than 30,000 papier-mâché tigers. They looked scary, but that was it. You can leave it as it is, but we only need a minimum of 3,000 ships, so let's cut military funding. Our upkeep expenses will be reduced by several magnitudes if we do. Is that enough for the territory? I am the ruler of an entire galaxy, you know? When you think about things on a galactic scale, would even the full force of 30,000 be enough? Brian knew the answer to that question, and in truth, it's difficult to say. Lord Liam, we certainly have the administrative rights to an entire galaxy, but we can barely manage this one planet and its resources alone. We simply don't have enough personnel. Understood? Then we'll take a disarmament policy for the time being. Although the territory under his dominion was wide, there were only a few locations that were actually managed by him. Now, let's begin the restructuring right away. It looks like we have some hope in securing a budget. Stop making that face. After being told that, Brian couldn't help but panic a little. It was quite concerning that Liam seemed to easily take to the opinions of an artificial intelligence. Please wait one moment. Lord Liam, it's customary in the Empire to at least have a force equivalent to 10,000 ships. If we break down the military that much, we might get invaded by our neighboring lords. This is a very dangerous venture. Liam looked troubled, so Amagi gave her opinion as well. Their militaries are quite old-fashioned as well, so the neighboring lords only have their fleets for the sake of showmanship. Well, I imagine they go on the attack if we started reinforcing ourselves with new arms from the Empire. 1/10 of our current forces was enough. But it's still true that the neighboring lords are dangerous. This is a gamble. This opinion needed to be heard. Even without the lords, there were still many dangerous individuals in the universe, such as space pirates. Lord Liam, it's important to have a fleet. Please reconsider. But Liam rejected the plea. I don't need papier-mâché tigers. What I need is an army that can actually fight. Amagi were proceeding with the reorganization. Amagi then describes the future plans in detail. We'll do our best to re-educate and retrain our current forces. After that, I recommend that we slowly build up and expand the military in accordance to our financial situation. Liam seemed satisfied with that plan. Finish up quickly. Brian couldn't help but think. This child's determination, it reminds me of the Earl I once admired. Liam's great-grandfather Alistair was a fine nobleman. Brian couldn't help but superimpose that image onto Liam. His only downside was how he seemed to have a sweet spot for his android. This sucks. After I stepped out of the capsule, I had to go through some physical therapy and tutoring for a while, but when I got to work, I was stunned by the territory's current situation. There's nothing for me to squeeze out of them. They've already been squeezed dry. This is a universe where science and magic should have developed equally. Yet the lives of the people living in my territory looked worse than those living in modern Japan from my previous life. This was an intergalactic state. Even though we were living in an era where space battleships went to war by firing epic lasers at each other and such, it looks like my territory has been left behind by the times. If things are like this, it'd be impossible for me to oppress the populace any more than they already have been. In the first place, this was the Banfield House's territory, so why is it so desolate? How come nobody tried to develop the territory? Amagi swiftly provides an answer to my complaints. Even if you didn't do anything, ITLL develop. As the noble who rules over them, the easiest path would be to just let them grow the way they want to. Trying to develop the area yourself is a very difficult thing to do and manage. Employ artificial intelligences to manage the projects. You're the only one who would accept such conditions. At the very least, it'll be here to assist you whenever possible. They wrung them out to dry and took everything they could without leaving the populace enough resources to sustain and grow the territory themselves. It seems like they thought it'd be fine as long as they just threw some of them into learning capsules if they wanted knowledge, while throwing manpower to those who were silent. The oppressed people were just forcibly taught a multitude of things, the majority of which being knowledge that they couldn't even put into practical use. There was nowhere for me to mess around with. As an evil lord, I'm already in a crisis. This did my parents just force onto me the ruined territory that they couldn't save themselves? Did the guide lie to me? That can't be. I shook my head in denial as Amagi spoke to me softly. Master, the Banfield family's territory is definitely in a bad situation. But there's nowhere we can go but up from here. If you manage the tax and territory correctly, we can probably rebound in 10 to 20 years. People have long life expectancy in this era. In this universe you become an adult once you turn 50 years old. But even at the age of 50, what was terrifying is that they could still have the appearance of someone from my previous life in their teenage years. With that said, 20 years wasn't actually a long time in comparison to my lifespan. ITLL only take 20 years? Yes, in 20 years the territory will recover. If Amagi says so, then it has to be true. Even if I want to oppress them, there's no point if the people have nothing for me to take in the first place. Besides, my body is still young. I have plenty of time to learn the ropes and make some investments. There's no problem as long as I can collect the profits later. If we don't have the necessary budget at the moment, then let's just invest it all. It'll reap the profits from them eventually. In any case, Amagi, I want power. You want to increase your forces? If it's about wepo, no, I'm talking about individual power. My own personal power. You want to train your body? Yes, I want to be strong. Martial arts or anything is fine. I've already suffered quite a bit from simple violence. Whenever the repo men came to collect on the debts, I couldn't help but quake in fear. Even though I believed that violence is meaningless, I had to acknowledge that power is something necessary in certain situations. To be able to step on others, I need strength. I want to have the power to not be afraid of others. I want to be ready in case things get violent. I want to be strong for that reason. Master, I don't believe that's necessary, but if that's your wish, then I can gather the minimum things needed. Rejected. Gather for me the best teachers you can find. In order to not be robbed of anything ever again. I wanted the power to steal everything from them first. The guide was standing there in a black space. He set his travel bag down and was grinning while watching a video. The video shown was that of the woman that Liam used to be married to in his previous life. It had only been a few years, and yet she had grown so haggard. You've been through quite a lot, haven't you? You're a complete mess, and your hair is filthy. He froze the video on the image of her together with both her original daughter and 2 new children. The guide looked upon the image of the former wife with joy. All around him were images of people who were just as miserable. Oops, I've been distracted for too long. I can't forget about him now. Let's see, what's the situation? He cocked his head. There was the reincarnator Liam, who was now 7 years old and talking to a robot. He was laughing. It's amazing how something that looks so alive is actually just some manufactured doll. In addition, he hasn't even realized that by keeping it nearby he's been compromising his social status. Now this has potential. Even though he put him in such a terrible environment, his spirits are still high. In the video, Liam suddenly declared that he wanted power. Human who had been threatened with violence in the past, yet wanted that same power in their next lives. The guide loved humans like that. I want the power to make sure I never lose anything important to me ever again. It might be a long and difficult path to change, but that's fine. The guide reached out and touched the picture. Black smoke started to emanate from his body and penetrated into the image. They'll give you this small gift. It's my motto to always have a good after-sales service ready. The personnel needed were ready. He searched for the man that was going to become Liam's teacher and forcibly made a connection. The man was going to be Liam's master of martial arts anyway, so I hope you have fun, Liam. He'll make sure I'm there to grab you once everything falls apart. The guide then continued to watch Liam with his crescent-like smile. The Banfield house port. A man had arrived there, wearing a kimono. He was also wearing a hakama, so his appearance was similar to that of a samurai, no, a ronin. There was a sword hanging on his waist. It's been a while since I've been to the frontier. The man's name was Yasushi. He looked a bit vulgar, but he was the man that had come to teach Liam martial arts. Originally, the master of martial arts Amaji requested for was another man. However, due to the bad reputation surrounding the Banfield family, the master declined the request and passed it off to Yasushi instead. Take this request in my place and bring me the reward. Yasushi was in the master's debt, so he accepted, albeit reluctantly. The master nominated Yasushi to go in his place, and in turn this decided who Liam's teacher would be. However, Yasushi had a secret. While it is true that he had learned many martial arts, he couldn't use any of them without being hit by dizzy spells. He was the kind of liar that would say he mastered martial arts, and then show off a couple tricks for an applause while earning a quick buck. I'm told my client's just a brat, so this should be easy enough. Even so, it's a shame that he ended up with me as his teacher. He was going to teach him everything he could. However, secret techniques and such were impossible. If he's just some spoiled brat, then he'll get tired of things soon enough. Though it would be nice to have a more moderate kid to boss around. Even so, for him to ask for a sword master, he's probably a strange one. Swords were used in this era, but they weren't that prominent anymore. They still had a certain popularity, sure, but even then most would choose a Western sword to master instead. Yasushi had also followed the way of the sword for a long time. Now, I wonder how much money he'll be able to squeeze out of this kid. In a nutshell, this man was a faker. The man who scams others with tricks was chosen by the guide's malice to become Liam's master. Chapter 3. School of the One Flash. Someone with the atmosphere of an old man had arrived. At the end of the Wacky Mansion's garden, the old man, my new teacher, Master Yasushi One, was sitting in front of me. He was a bearded man wearing a shabby kimono. He looked like a ronin, but somehow the atmosphere about him was different. He was probably someone who had mastered true martial arts. Sir Liam. Slowly and quietly the master called my name. Why yes? Maybe noticing how I was shaking, Master started to smile. You don't have to be so tense. First, I guess he'll explain some things about my style. Master showed me his katana. Swords were something that were used in this universe, so it'd be better to learn how to use it if I can. There wasn't anything special about it, but I could really feel the atmosphere of a master around him. I could tell he was a great choice for an instructor. Sir Liam, this is my school's only secret technique, so don't show or use it recklessly. With that said, I still need to show you the benefits of studying under me, so this is a special case. If possible, I'd appreciate it if you were the only one to witness it. This is great. I didn't think that I'd be shown a secret technique so soon. Standing behind me, Amaji sent a suspicious look towards Master. Unacceptable, that would be a breach of safety protocols. But Master didn't break his expression. In that case, I will have to decline this job request. I immediately gave the order to Amaji. Amaji, I'll permit it. Frowning, and with a look that showed she was a little hesitant. Please call me for help if something happens. Said this and left. Once it was just the two of us, Master took out some logs he had prepared beforehand. He handed them over to me. Are you going to cut this? You bet. Just place them anywhere you wish, Sir Liam. Preferably somewhere farther than my sword's length. Once I decided where I wanted them, Master told me to just stick them into the ground. After the logs were set, Master began to ready his stance from a distance his sword couldn't possibly reach. The blade was still sheathed. Sir Liam, the flash is a secret technique that combines both the powers of martial arts and magic power. This one technique is enough. If you can master this, then all you need to practice from then on would be the basics. I was breathless in the atmosphere surrounding Master. This is a technique that must never be seen. The moment that someone is able to see it, it loses all meaning. This is the secret behind the flash. Having said that, Master pressed his thumb against the hilt of his sword and pushed it out of its sheath slightly, making a clear snapping sound. His right arm didn't even move to draw it. If I didn't know any better, then I would have thought he didn't do anything at all, but you've got to be kidding me. All the logs were cleaved and fell to the ground. The cuts were so beautiful, it's as if they were cut with a completely different blade. There's no way that the blade could reach this far. Was the technique something akin to a sword draw? Master exhaled a loud breath and turned towards me while I was puzzled. This is the secret technique, Flash. How did you cut them? To my astonished self, Master displayed his sword to me again and lightly shook it. Another log was sliced in two, one of the extra ones that I didn't set up, but the thing was, it was behind Master this time. You'll understand as you undergo the process of learning it. Only through rigorous self-discipline can someone learn the answer. With that said, I'll ask you, do you want to learn the Flash? Quickly nodded my head. I do. Fantasy universes are amazing. I never would have thought in my wildest dreams that there were skills like this. Several years have passed since that day. Liam is 10 years old now. Every day he continued to train in the basics Yasushi taught him. Yasushi was watching him from a distance. Children sure do learn things quickly now then. What should I do for our next lesson? He not only taught the basics of the sword, but also the basics of spearmanship, hand-to-hand, combat, knives, and many other things. In the first place, Yasushi didn't have a lot that he could teach anyways. Even while he was teaching Liam, there were even times when he couldn't even pass on the basics clearly. Yasushi was resting in the shade of a tree as he looked towards the new mansion. The old weird-looking mansion was demolished, and a rather simple mansion was built in its stead. The Banfields are said to have a terrible taste in architecture, but that kid seems to have rather humble preferences. Yasushi didn't think that he was treated that badly, but compared to the other nobles he had seen, Liam was terribly frugal. Even today he was desperately practicing the basics. In just 3 years, Yasushi was already running out of things to teach. So now he just watched. It's nice being able to just watch, but that robot comes over to observe him too every now and then. Now, just why does he keep something like that by his side? Nobles generally preferred to avoid robots when possible. This truth only further increased Yasushi's impression of Liam being a strange person. Noble society sure is complicated. Forcing the right to rule over a territory to a little kid. It was a dull territory, but at least it was better than how it used to be a few years ago. Former soldiers and civil servants who had received vocational training were developing the infrastructure of the land. Development had stagnated in the territory, but the region was slowly becoming more vibrant as the use of tax money and circulation of goods had risen far higher than they were before. But Yasushi knew the true circumstances behind the Banfield house. Just because things got a little better didn't mean that their huge debt was going to just disappear. Even if things developed a bit, they'd just be bled accordingly. If you look at things that way, maybe it's just because the kid's poor. Yasushi felt a little sympathetic towards Liam. But that's all he felt. As long as the kid still thought he was teaching him, he'd mooch off of him for as long as possible. However, there was just one thing that bothered him. Still, I know that kid abhors corruption, so if him found out, won't I be executed as well? It's been a while since I started learning martial arts. A new mansion had been completed. Well, this should be fine, right? My first impression of the provisional mansion was that it was enough. It was definitely big. Even the ceiling was high. This really is a mansion. It gave off that kind of feeling. It was neither strange nor original, but it wasn't an inconvenient place to live. Amagi spoke to me while I was signing documents in my office. Master, when do you plan to enter the capsule again? Is it already that time? It was time to enter the education capsule again. Due to time limitations, it wasn't possible to go through normal schooling that stretched across many years. So I had to enter it several times before I became an adult. When will it be okay for me to enter? You're free to enter whenever you wish. We've already planned ahead for half a year. Understood? Then I'll enter it soon. Basically, managing a planet was impossible for an individual. After all, problems were always occurring on a day-to-day basis. I couldn't do this alone. So I gathered the best officials among the populace and assigned them to manage various regions. Amagi's hand stopped after reading over one document. What happened? Please look at this document. It was just a normal document, but there was something strange about its contents. Looking into it, it turns out that the official that wrote it was doing illegal activities to increase his profits. Summon the man who sent this document to me immediately. As you wish. Amagi proceeded to contact them, and a few hours later, a man who held considerable power among the officials arrived at the mansion. The tall man dressed in a suit was clearly agitated. Yet he put on his best smile as he addressed me. My lord, I don't think you understand, but these costs were necessary for my job. That's what he says. But I've already read Amagi's reports. Once again, I couldn't help but marvel at how amazing AIs were. I've already confirmed the misappropriation of government funds. We've also confirmed various other offenses that you've committed. I confirmed these after checking out various other documents. For him to commit so many atrocities and still smile in front of me like they were nothing, everything from simple embezzlement to sending out bribes and corrupting other officials. But it's one thing in particular that caught my eye. He actually hit somebody with a car, but wasn't held accountable at all. To the family that protested against him, he erased them. Moreover, he played around with the man's wife before throwing her away. The official continued to make excuses in front of me. My lord, don't believe what the robots say. They're the beings that destroyed the old civilization and are the enemies of humanity. Please forgive me, lord. Certainly, I've committed a few crimes, but everyone else is doing these things as well. It's a necessary expenditure needed for me to continue doing my work. Before the official that started spouting utter nonsense, I grabbed the sword I had kept nearby. Amagi tried to stop me. Master, don't do this. As I started to unsheath my blade, the official immediately began to genuflect in front of me. That was just a joke, sire. You still need me alive. The only reason why you can still rule over us is thanks to my suppo. I drew my sword and bisected the official in half. Blood spurted out and stained the room red. Your mouth, close it. Amagi started using some kind of spray on me. The blood stains on me started to bubble up and disappear. Master, he's already dead. I looked down at the body. The image of it started to overlap with the adulterer from my previous life. The man who took everything away from me. One of his lawyers came and suddenly started spouting accusations, saying that I was in the wrong. I couldn't do anything, and was fired from the company I worked at. It was only a cruel life that awaited me from there. This is my power and my right. Trash like you deserve to die. I'm pissed now. Amagi, look through the data thoroughly. From here on, all corrupted officials are to be executed. I take care of the subordinates that follow me, but I have no mercy for those who try to take advantage of me for their own gain. I'm the only one who's allowed to oppress the people of my territory. Master, please release your grip. Amagi had grabbed onto my hands, which were still holding the sword. I tried to let go, but my fingers wouldn't move. Ichha, don't worry. I'm here for you. Gently, one by one, she pried my fingers off the sword's handle. I was sweating profusely by the time I finally let go. Am I feeling guilty for killing someone for the first time? That's quite pathetic for someone aiming to become an evil lord. Amagi received my sword that was still dripping blood and sheathed it. As I thought, I can't do this alone. It doesn't need to be at the same level as yourself, but start preparing suitable robots and AIs that can work management positions. I thought as much while looking down at the official's corpse. AIs were more useful than trash like this. The only problem is the matter regarding reputation. Brian said that the use of AIs was something looked down on in the Empire, but that didn't matter to me. I was prepared for the consequences. How many can we afford? Amagi answered immediately. Well, we do need more personnel to manage the mansion. From a financial standpoint, we can afford 12 maid units like myself. After that, if they're specifically designed to help govern the territory, there shouldn't be any problems as long as we make the necessary preparations. Do what you need to do. I shall begin the arrangements immediately. I looked at the official's body one more time and stuck my tongue out. Amagi is better than you. Brian was in the new mansion educating the new servants. They all had scared looks on their faces. Not too long ago, Liam had executed all the corrupt officials at once. He purged the territory of its filth. As a result, there were many rumors flying around about the young Lord Liam. One of them being that he would immediately murder any servant who angered him. Brian took the time to explain the truth to them. It's true that you should watch your behavior around Lord Liam, but he's kind to those who work hard. You don't need to be any more afraid of him than necessary. One of the maids anxiously raised her hand. What is it? Oh, well, I heard Lord Liam calls over servants to serve him in that way, so the owner of the house lays his hands on the servants. Such a story was commonplace among the nobility. Sometimes women would take advantage of these rumors and try to sell themselves into houses. However, it seems that girls were actually scared and felt anxious whenever they heard stories about Liam. Lord Liam is still young, and only keeps Amagi by his side, so there's no need for you to worry about such things. That's when someone muttered, keeping a robot by his side. Brian was keen on those words. I will pretend I didn't hear those words, but please refrain from saying things of the sort from now on. Amagi has been the source of many problems for Brian. That said, he couldn't help but realize something in these last few years. Liam trusted Amagi far more than necessary. It was almost as if he was a spoiled child, and in truth he was. Despite his young age, he was quite fierce and determined. but there must still be a part of him that yearned for a mother figure. Lord Liam is quite wise for his age. He should already understand that he's been abandoned. Lord Cliff, why didn't you raise him with more love? Amagi is a very special existence for Lord Liam, so take care to not undermine her. If Lord Liam finds out, there's nothing he'll be able to do to help you. While young, Liam was already feared inside the territory. Despite that, the domain is definitely improving. If it's Lord Liam, there's no doubt the Banfield family will be able to regain its former glory. However, at the same time, he did gain a little popularity for purging the corrupted officials. Thinking about this, Brian once again swore allegiance to Liam in his heart. Chapter 4. Liam, 30 years old. Usually when you think about a 30-year-old, you'd imagine a fully grown adult. But 30 years old in this universe is still the equivalent of an elementary school child. Point 1. I had grown a little taller than I was before from sleeping and eating well. Is this body not healthier than the one from my previous life's childhood? Everything is great except for another failure? I sheathed the sword I held in my left hand as I inspected the surrounding logs. Of the 3 that I set up, I was only able to cut through 2. And even then, all the cuts are extremely rough. They were completely different from the cut that Master showed me. My jagged slices are an embarrassment in comparison to Master's. His were cut so cleanly that you would have believed him if he had told you that they were cut beforehand. Master has a perplexed expression on his face as he watched me. Is he disappointed? I lowered my head in shame. I'm sorry, Master. I'm still nowhere close to reaching your level of skill. Master shook his head. The path of the sword is long and steep. There is no end goal. With that said, you've done well to progress this far in only 20 years. I've pondered about how I could replicate Master these past 20 years. I didn't think I'd be able to do it even after I became proficient in the basics, and then I remembered Master's words. Magic existed in this universe. That's it. I need to use magic. Condense the magic power into a thin blade and extend it from my sword. Is that the correct answer? I thought that was correct, but the results were still far too different from Master's demonstration. While I was wondering about what I did wrong, Master started to applaud. If you've noticed this much, then you've gotten close to the truth. I've gotten close? Yeah, that's right. Now that you've figured out that you need to use magic, you must now focus on mastering that magic. I need to learn magic? I'm a noble, and yet I'm also learning how to use magic in recent times. The magic power of individuals aren't considered that important. Magic would be powerless against space battleship lasers. Taking that into account, martial arts were pretty much in the same boat. If taken to the extremes, I could be completely incompetent in these things and be fine. Even so, these lessons will no doubt be useful in times of crisis. Yes, but in the end that's just magic. It's not enough. Understood. I need to study many things in earnest. They'll try to include some magic classes soon. Master nodded. This is good, but I'm going to have to seal that technique for a while. It's true that you need to learn magic, but you're not ready for it yet. So for the next decade I'm going to prohibit any training other than the basics. Even though I was finally able to achieve something, I shouted those complaints in my mind, but I couldn't go against Master. If I tried to fight against this person, I'd be split into 2 in an instant. Okay, I understand. Well, for now, why not focus on your government affairs? If the lord of a territory solely focused on his martial abilities, then he'd be a failure of a lord. Is that what he's thinking? He must be worried about me. It's okay, while we're still in the process of reforming the land, the results are finally starting to bear fruit. The military was reorganized. The government was reformed. Decisions were made to develop the territory, and the plans have already been set in motion. In a universe that has already made advancements into space exploration, the development capability of society is insanely high. Can you imagine skyscrapers being built in only a few days? Machines and androids controlled by the people can complete the construction things at dizzying speeds. You've done well, but like always we can't neglect the basics. Yes. It looks like doing it normally won't help you develop any further, so for now I want you to continue while strapped on with weights and blindfolded. You want me to wear a blindfold and weights? Master proceeded to tie weights onto the sword and blindfolded me. Keep swinging the heavier blade until it feels like you're swinging a small branch, and the blindfold should help you learn how to not rely on eyesight alone. Understood. It's like the training sessions I'd see in a cartoon. But everything that Master says is absolute. Now that I think about it, the entertainment industry hasn't developed that much due to the lack of time. Should I try to invest a bit more there? Yasushi watched Liam as he swung the weighted sword blindfolded. What the hell is this? What the hell are you? His cold sweat had been going on nonstop for a while. There's no way Yasushi could have predicted that Head actually transform his street magic trick into an actual secret swordsmanship technique. Yasushi even thought that Liam's movements were even better than himself recently. Even though he had only taught him the basics, Yasushi couldn't help but feel embarrassed by Liam, who had developed an entire secret technique on his own. If he finds out that I was lying, I'd stand no chance. I'd be chopped up in an instant. With an atmosphere like that, there's no way he could come clean now. Liam was already several steps higher than himself as a swordsman. He had already lost what little confidence in his blade he had left. In any case, I was stupid enough to not save any money. I can't run away anymore. The rewards were already exhausted because he already spent them on luxuries. He'd sneak out to the city every now and then, saying that he was going to check on the state on his other disciples in various other places. There wasn't enough money to escape. There's no other choice. Let's save up the funds and disappear. Yes, that's the plan. Let's do it. Now that he was blindfolded, Yasushi could finally wipe his cold sweat in front of the steadfast Liam. I really only taught him the basics. Could he be a genius? Yasushi was no teacher. He couldn't have possibly known Liam was this talented. Arg. I don't care anymore. In any case, it's earning time now. I need to research some ways to train him, or else he'll be killed. Yasushi swore to endure living frugally for a while as he saved up enough money to escape. Does it really make sense to be blindfolded? At the beginning, I questioned this thought process. But now, I finally understand what you were trying to convey to me, Master. I can now perceive what it means to use my senses other than sight. You wanted me to know that it wasn't enough to just see things with my eyes alone. I told Master as such while I was still blindfolded. Master tried to walk away while I was blindfolded, but amazingly enough, I immediately discern his position just from the slight sounds of his footsteps. Did I surprise you, Master? Is this not proof that I'm growing up? Well, it's quite surprising that you had gotten this far in such a short period of time. No, really. Just how were you able to learn this in just a few years? It seems like my growth was unprecedented. I was now able to perceive people even when I wasn't looking at them, and I could easily swing the weighted sword with only my fingertips now. Look at my progress, Master. I can now swing it this easily. Oh, yeah. Don't get conceited. Huh? Master went on to scold me. While it may be true that you've refined your senses other than vision, that all you've done, you still haven't learned how to perceive things with magic. After being reminded of magic, I couldn't help but be surprised that there was still so much for me to learn. You've enlightened me, Master. Of course I have. Now then, your current sword is too light, so I'm going to prepare a custom one for you. Excitement started welling up inside me after hearing that I was going to get a customized sword. I'm looking forward to it, Master. Man. That was a close one. What does that mean? Felt like Master was frightened for a moment there. Is it just my imagination? Give me a break already, damn it. Yasushi couldn't feel anything but fear towards Liam, who had turned towards him, even while blindfolded. A heavy sword was easily being swung with just his fingertips. Isn't that kid able to live normally? Blindfolded now? Even if Yasushi tried to run away, He'd find him. What do I do? What the hell am I supposed to do? I didn't think that He'd actually learn anything from this. Yasushi intended to earn himself some more time, but his plans had already gone awry in just a couple years. Was this kid always a genius? Then tell me something like that in the beginning. In the first place, Yasushi was never a teacher. He was just a con man. It was impossible for him to measure Liam's talent and potential. I'll order the heaviest sword I can find. I'll extend its length as well. I'll make it so it's almost impossible for him to swing it. Develop his sixth sense. Learn to see the unseen. Strengthen his magic, etc. Yasushi pondered ways he could extend the training when another plan popped into his head. That's it. I'll use that. Yasushi walked up to the mansion's warehouse. Furniture and fragile items that were removed from the demolished building were stored here. Yasushi had sold the antiques he had stolen from here, even if most of them were fakes. Among all the items was a very old humanoid machine, a mobile knight. It was a lumbering giant that stood 24 meters tall in comparison to the recent 14-meter-tall models. It was an ancient machine that was hundreds of years old, something that had fallen out of use several generations ago. It was the machine that Liam's great-grandfather had piloted. Yasushi had come to the warehouse with Amagi and pointed towards the knight. Prepare this old machine. It's going to become Liam's new training equipment. Amagi turned a suspicious gaze towards Yasushi. This is a very outdated machine. Should I prepare a current model instead? That would be very bad. Yasushi knew that modern knights were easier to maneuver. As new models and generations came out, movement and other actions became much more user-friendly. Their performance have also been dramatically improved, so if someone like Liam started piloting one of those, he'd be able to master it in just a few years. Yasushi wouldn't be able to buy enough time at all. This is also for Sir Liam's sake. I want him to use this one after it's been repaired. But the parts aren't in commission anymore, it only delay the repair time. It's universally accepted to use 14 and 18 class models, so there aren't that many factories that can even handle something of this size. Amagi only responded politely to Yasushi because Liam recognized him as his master. If Liam didn't, then her response would have been far more vulgar. You don't think I don't know that? They'll make you spend what little money you have left on this. Then you won't have the time nor the funds needed to chase me. Imagenius. Yasushi knew the basic mechanics of the old knight models. He knew that they were built to be very sturdy. The old machines are solidly built. With some new parts it can be far more robust than the current knights. I'm telling you, it's not that simp. As Amagi tried to deny it, Yasushi pushed through with his opinion. This is final. Repair this machine. This is all for Sir Liam's sake. The control method is ideal because it's a manual. It's not good to rely on recent models' auto assistance. Amagi reluctantly consented while after he continued to spout on for a while. Liam had told her to respond to Yasushi's instructions to the best of her abilities. They'll make the arrangements immediately. Also, make sure to spend as much as you can. Remember, this is all for Sir Liam's sake. Even though he knew they were in debt, Yasushi put in various orders to further tighten the house's finances. Inside the warehouse that Yasushi had already departed from, Amagi looked up at the mobile knight designation. Avid. There were many exposed parts that showed the basic frame, and some parts of the armored frame were rusted. Looking up at the tattered Avid, Amagi couldn't help but think, is that person even qualified to teach? I'm certain that my master is stronger than him, and he doesn't give off the feeling of someone that special. Just by looking at his way of living, Yasushi definitely didn't look like he was qualified. But he produced results. In addition to that, no information comes out about him no matter how much I investigate him. Rather, that's just even more unnatural. With that said, it was difficult to dismiss Yasushi because he produced results. Besides, there's no problem as long as his suspicious sides don't interfere with his job. Amagi was exasperated as to how things came to this. It's an order, so he'll just do it. In current times, large 24-meter class knights weren't widely used. Therefore, if they were hoping to maintain it, they couldn't hire just any factory. They had to bring in a large factory that had the superior facilities capable of making the needed parts. To give an example, it'd be like taking a classic sports car to a small garage workshop. If they didn't have the parts, then they wouldn't be able to fix it. I need to call in a manufacturer from the Empire. It's one of the Empire's weapon factories who were responsible for building Avid. They still existed, so they were the only place where the repairs could really be trusted. Amagi double-checked the Yasushi's request. That's a big demand, but it is possible to secure a budget. I should call someone in first, though. She wanted to have a mechanic check on Avid's condition before contacting the factory. As she left the warehouse thinking about what to do, she found Liam walking around blindfolded. Her mood instantly brightened. Those footsteps have to be Amagi. You are correct, master. He was walking around as if he could the surroundings clearly despite the blindfold. Master, it's dangerous to walk around in that condition. It's no problem. This is just practice. Anyways, I heard that you were going to prepare a knight for me? Amagi began to talk about the knight Yasushi recommended. We're planning to bring in one of the old-fashioned knights. But in my opinion, it'd be better if we budgeted for a 14-meter class instead. Liam started to rub his chin while tilting his head. It's my master's idea, so we'll talk to him about it. But for now, I'm going to continue walking around the estate as is. Liam then began to walk away blindfolded. Amagi couldn't help but feel uneasy when looking at such a sight. Chapter 5. Avid. Around the time when I was about to reach my mid-30s, the mobile knight that I had sent out for repairs had finally returned. It was a humanoid weapon wearing knight-like armor, and on its arms it had its most defining characteristic of a large shield mounted on each of its shoulders. I thought there was no point in developing a weapon in the shape of a person, but from the perspective of this universe's people, humanoid weapons were easier to control. Fantasy universes are awesome. Avid was currently stationed in the mansion's garden, and it looked quite menacing. Now aren't you amazing? Standing next to me was a satisfied-looking technician from the Algren Empire's 7th weapon factory. I could tell that she was a soldier because a class badge that was pinned on her uniform. The technical lieutenant wore glasses and had black hair that reached her shoulders. She gave off the feeling of an intelligent woman who had pride in her work. I still haven't heard her name. I'm glad that you like it, although I didn't think we'd be able to repair an aircraft like this. You know this aircraft? It's because it's an aircraft manufactured by us. The same model can be found in the reference books of our library. A large aircraft that hasn't been used in recent times. Though it seems there's no problem with upkeep since the large models are maintained the same way the small ones are. The technical lieutenant looked a little worried. Are you sure you're okay with this? With the auto assistance removed, ITLL become far more difficult to maneuver. Is it like the difference between using a manual and an automatic car? Master, who was with me, laughed while crossing his arms. Sir Liam can easily overcome an obstacle of this difficulty. So don't worry. Now then, may I have the pleasure of your name? I'd like to have a brief discussion about this aircraft, so why don't we talk inside the guest room? There should be no problem because I've prepared a manual, and if it's the Count who'll be piloting it, then it's better to explain it to him directly. Master seems to have a thing for the technical lieutenant. But she declined his invitation with a smile. I looked at Master, who drooped his shoulders. As his evil lord, should I allow this person to be Master's pairer? Well, the other party is an imperial soldier. She's the kind of person you'd normally hesitate getting involved with. Now then, would you like to enter into the cockpit, my lord? Yeah. While being guided by the technical lieutenant, I headed over to the cockpit. You can't say that the cockpit is narrow. It's actually quite wide. No, isn't this too much space? The cockpit has been expanded using space manipulation magic. We've also prepared the highest quality seats to make sure you're comfortable. Aside from the fact that there's no auto assistance, this is definitely a top caliber model. When I sat down, I could feel how soft the seat was. It was like I had a supportive feeling wrapped around my body. It was that kind of sensation. The control stick automatically adjusted to the position of my hand. I'm liking it so far. It's my favorite color, black, and it looks really cool. A lot of our male customers like black, so there are many black aircrafts. Many nobles have knights. The reason is because knights are a certain kind of status symbol. There's also the fact that humanoid weapons are simply popular among the nobles. As long as it looks good, the nobles will buy it to further their house's prestige. There are even nobles who dress like knights. The thing is, there aren't that many people who are willing to spend this much on airframe maintenance. Is that so? I thought everybody went this far. Master told me so, and based on that, I agreed to splurge on money. Usually amounts like that are used for improving the contents of multiple mass-produced models. You gave us an abundant budget, so the engineers got to go all out. Now try starting the engine. When I started the engine with a switch, something started to scan my body. It's capable of recognizing the pilot, so no one unist can just use it. My lord, the imprinting is complete. You are now the sole operator and pilot capable of moving this child. It's a custom-made aircraft built just for you. Hearing that it's a personal machine makes me happy. When I grasped and moved the control stick, the scenery displayed in front of me completely changed. The cockpit started to shake lightly. Before I noticed it, Avid was already falling. The technical lieutenant had a face on that said, as expected. This child has had all assist functions as well as the auto balancer removed. It has a very difficult control scheme, but if you can master it, then you'll be able to move it as if it were a part of your own body. Learning how to use something like this was probably going to be tough anyways. I finally understand what Master was trying to tell me. If I can become proficient in using this, then I could be one of the best pilots there is. No, if you can already handle this as a child, then you're already a top pilot. The technical lieutenant placed her hand over mine that was holding the control stick. I could feel and smell the gentle warmth of a lady. I guess even if it's just a little, my distrust of girls was getting better, though there was still a sense of unease. Direct steering and image control is important for piloting this child. Always keep the magic operations in mind. Now let's try moving the control stick slowly. Bit by bit, Avid gradually started to stand. Who knew that just standing up could be this nerve-wracking? If I even made the tiniest mistake, then the aircraft was sure to fall. As the technical lieutenant explained Avid's functions, I did my best to focus while listening. This child is sturdy, but it's also extremely powerful. Just moving the aircraft is easy, but you have to remember that this isn't a game. Make sure to handle it with caution. The technical lieutenant had pressed close to me, and then here I inadvertently felt my body tense up. I didn't have anywhere I could run to. She was quite well endowed in both her chest and her bottom. She had good style, and her tight waist exuded how fit she was. I couldn't help but become conscious of her chest as she kept explaining things. At that time Avid, who had detected my thoughts and magic, began to move his hands. No, it had probably moved in regards to orders I had subconsciously given. The technical lieutenant noticed the movement and immediately took some distance from me, hiding her chest with her arms. Why, you have the wrong idea. Why don't we take a break here? Oh, communications seemed to be offline. Was there an error in the calibration? Brian took in the revived image of Avid, the knight of Liam's well-respected great-grandfather, Alistair, and felt immense joy. Even though its form had been altered, there were still traces of the original model left. However, he was quite worried about how Avid, which was Alistair's legacy, was making very suspicious hand movements. Lord Liam, just what exactly are you doing? He knew. He was aware. The beautiful technical lieutenant was alone with Liam in the cockpit. Since Liam is able to lay his hands on Amagi, maybe he'll do it to her as well? Brian was quite worried about that. However, this was the same Liam who generally avoided actual women. Brian was concerned that he might only be attracted to androids. If he had finally awakened to the charms of real girls, then Brian could finally stop worrying about the problem of an heir. That said, no sound was coming out of the night, which was making movements as if it were fondling something. Brian started to shed tears at the thought that Alistair's legacy was making such obscene movements. Avid was capable of reproducing the pilot's hand movements very finely. It was as if there was an actual chest there. At least turn off the power first. Brian thought so, but could only look on at the situation without interfering. In addition to that, communications seemed to have been turned off. For quite a while, Yasushi had quite the annoyed expression on his face. That brat being able to cope a feel of that lieutenant's chest. Are they soft? Hey, are they soft? While the hands continued their profane movements, Yasushi kept trying to connect the communication line as his temper reached its limits. Sir Liam, get out of there immediately. Don't get into any enviable situations in there. Get out right away. Understand? Sir Liam? Are you listening to me? Sir Liam? He kept his cool in front of Liam, but when out of sight his bad attitude started to shine through. Brian didn't trust him either. How did a man like this get Lord Liam to grow that much? They couldn't get rid of him because he produced results, and even if they reported these things to Liam, he'd ignore them due to the complete respect he had for Yasushi, his master. He hadn't caused any big problems yet, so Brian kept his opinions to himself as long as Liam kept giving results. Though Yasushi did tell Amagi to revive Alistair's legacy, so Brian was happy about that. Under normal circumstances, Amagi, who prioritized efficiency, would have never sent Avid out for repairs. Yasushi was screaming now. I said, get down from there, you shitty brat. At that comment, Amagi started to glare at Yasushi. He immediately noticed and apologized. Sorry about that. I was just a bit worked up. While dripping with cold sweat, he was displaying quite the pathetic appearance in front of the android Amagi. Was this man really a master of swords and martial arts? Brian couldn't help but wonder so. Brat, I definitely won't forgive you. Yasushi was furious at the fact that his apprentice laid hands on such an intellectual beauty. However, he was also afraid Liam would lash out at him in anger if he did anything. So he'll vent his frustration through strict training sessions. A small fry who kept petty grudges. That's the kind of man Yasushi was. Sir Liam, you're shaking. Independent Illinois, be careful. Liam was standing on a shaky log while blindfolded, and if that wasn't enough, he was being forced to swing a modified sword designed to be several times heavier than normal ones. He was also forced to walk on tightropes and do various other performances. All just because he laid hands on the lady Yasushi favored. Don't swing your sword if you have an unstable foundation. Start again from the beginning. Liam seemed to be very tired and was sweating heavily. Yasushi was determined to push him to his very limits. It was that kind of training. We'll be having movement training when this is over. There's no time to rest. Understood, master. His response was good, but Liam still laid hands on the girl Yasushi was interested in. He could never forgive that. Even though I keep giving him such difficult requests, the fact that he's accomplishing all these things I couldn't do is breaking my pride. Just give up for once, kid. The technical lieutenant who stayed for about a month to explain maintenance procedures and piloting instructions for the aircraft had already left. She said that she'd come again, so next time Yasushi wanted to get her name and contact information. Your legs are still shaking, you haven't had enough training. Ugh, I'll make sure to train harder next time. I'll make sure you do. From now on we're gonna go at it even harder. Training had slowly become stricter just because of a personal grudge. The guide stepped through the door that crossed dimensions. He was standing on the roof of the mansion. The guide who watched things from afar had high expectations for the future. Now, how have things been going for you, Liam? Too, he seemed to be doing better than how the guide thought he'd be. Which is why it would be that much more delicious to destroy it all. It wouldn't be long now. The territory is actually full of vitality. And wait, is that scammer still working here? Even if Liam found out the truth and executed the con man, it didn't really matter. The guide would enjoy either situation. As the guide searched for Liam in joy, he found him in the mansion's garden. There were multiple logs arranged around him, but none of them were within reach of his sword's blade. Is he practicing right now? I'm looking forward to seeing how skilled he's become. He wasn't completely incompetent. The guide knew that the fraud would at least be able to teach him the basics of swordsmanship. But something at that level wasn't suitable for knights. If Liam actually thought he was strong after mastering that, then there'd be more fuel the guide could use for his future enjoyment. There were large differences in individual strength from residents of this universe. The contrast between a person who had used education capsules from an early age versus someone who had only used one once or twice was enormous. To put things at an extreme, people were born into talent here. Well-educated nobles and knights were naturally strong in this universe. Knights themselves being even more special, since they were individuals who could defeat gun-wielding soldiers with a blade. Liam pushed the sword out of its sheath slightly with his left thumb, releasing a small snap. The guide was bewildered. What? Almost immediately after, all the logs placed around him were sliced in half and fell to the ground with a thump. They were all cut cleanly and beautifully. Eh? The guide was frozen. In the 3 decades he had left him alone, Liam had become extremely strong. The android and the butler who were watching Liam started applauding. That was wonderful, Master. You have thoroughly impressed this Brian here. It was an unbelievable sight. Both his use of magic and his physical capabilities were off the charts. Only a handful of people could become this strong. Surprisingly, Liam still looked dissatisfied as he wiped his sweat off with the towel he received from Amagi. This is still nothing compared to my master's sword. I wanted him to teach me more, but Master suddenly gave me my swordsmanship license and left. The guide was panicking. What the hell did that guy do? Just what did he teach him? Summoning a bunch of windows with images on them, the guide brought up the image of Yasushi, who was currently drowning himself in alcohol. He was deep in conversation with a lady sitting beside him at the bar. What the hell is that guy? I just can't understand him. Are you talking about your disciple again, Yasushi? Yasushi was complaining. I'm less than a second-class swordsman, maybe even a third or fourth-class one. When I first got there, I actually resolved myself to do my job properly and teach, but before I knew it, he had already surpassed me within a decade, and by the 20th year he was already nearing the peak of swordsmanship. The lady started laughing, thinking that Yasushi was telling a joke. So in the last decade he became a master swordsman? Yasushi, that's a funny joke. The lady didn't believe him, but Yasushi strongly denied it. It's not a joke. That brat. Near the end he was asking me if I'd like to stay in his territory and open a dojo. I was so scared that I had to run away. It's not funny. It's not funny at all being near someone that can kill you without even drawing their sword. The street magic trick he showed him was completely reproduced as a sword technique. Liam was that unbelievable. The guide turned off the picture and started to rub in forehead, troubled. He had a headache. The cause was Liam. Liam's gratitude was reaching him. He could hear Liam's voice even now. I'm so lucky. I got to learn the sword from such a wonderful master without even knowing it. And my territory, which was so barren, has finally developed into something valuable. I thought that I was tricked at first, but the guide was telling the truth. He's such an amazing person. Thank you oh so much. These feelings were very unpleasant for the guide. Although he loved negative emotions, things like gratitude and favor made him feel nauseous. And Liam's vehement appreciation for the guide was no joke. Now how am I supposed to deal with this? Now that he was in this situation, the ill-feeling guide decided it was about time to finally send Liam into despair. Chapter 6. Honey Trap. The guide was deep in thought. While feeling nauseous from Liam's gratitude, he seriously pondered what had happened to Liam's deep-seated grudges and hate. The reason being that Liam's gratitude was worse than he expected. It was at a strength that his body could no longer shrug off. Now how can I make him suffer? The thing is, he only keeps old butlers and androids around himself. With this, I can't really deal any serious mental damage. If there was an actual human lady, on the other hand, I'd be able to stimulate his previous lives' trauma. At first the guide thought he should meddle with Liam's subordinates, but that was difficult now that Liam had already executed all the bureaucrats that were likely to be corrupted. On the other hand, if he meddled too much, then things wouldn't be that interesting anymore. As a guide, he only wanted to set the opportunities for things. After that, he would just sit back and watch as an individual's shallowness and incompetence ruined themselves. It wasn't his preference to get his own hands dirty, so this was quite bothersome. He's surprisingly serious. I thought that he'd been aiming to surround himself with beautiful women while indulging in carnal pleasures. Even though he said he was aiming to be an evil lord, all that he was doing was normal governance. Did he forget his own purpose? The guide watched Liam while having those thoughts. Liam, who was finally alone in his office, began to squirm nervously. Oh, after looking into his thoughts, it seems that Liam truly did have the intention to become an evil lord. He could hear the voice of Liam's heart. The territory has been developed, and the people finally have some breathing room. There's no point in squeezing them dry before they're even ready to be squeezed. You can't squeeze out a dry rag after all. The guide was happy to hear this. I see he's planning to raise his people up before dropping them down like how I'm doing to him. I don't hate this kind of development, it's still something usable. Liam was thinking about various things while grinning. Should I try to gather the beautiful girls together first? If taking into account the population of my territory, there should be at least 1 or 2 beauties. The guide felt excited by Liam's enthusiasm to take the things he wanted by force. This is fine, I can work with this. This is only a small setback. It doesn't matter if he does things through brute force or with bribes and money, as long as he still gets to the same ending. No, better yet, why don't I prepare another adulterer to seduce his pair right after they confess their love? I'm sure Liam will have some great emotions then. As the guide wallowed in his delusions, Amaji entered into the office. Liam's focus immediately switched over to Amaji's report. The guide proceeded to eavesdrop on their conversation. Were to receive some military personnel? Yes, it looks like they're going to send us some military officers who are close to retirement for reserve duty. Please contact me if you decide to go through with this, and I'll take care of the budgeting. The guide started to rub his chin as he listened. From the military's point of view, do they just want to reduce unusable human resources? Apparently, the Empire seems to want some military personnel regulated to the frontier. In response, the military took this chance to shove the useless people on reserve duty and other troublesome individuals onto the provincial nobles. Liam made a frustrated expression. In other words, they're dumping their garbage onto us? Though they are from the Empire's main army, so many of them should be graduates from the military academy, making them both educated and trained. They should have some battle experience, so maybe we can assign them as instructors to train our private army? Using said thought process, Liam reluctantly gave his permission. Upon hearing that, the guide's mouth distorted into a smile and he began to laugh. Let's set up the foundation for the future. It should be interesting to gather serious soldiers who want. Tolerate the rise of an evil lord. Even if they don't revolt, it should be fine as long as they cause Liam trouble. They were going to serve under Liam, a man who was planning to commit various atrocities as a despot after all. Surely the ethical soldiers would start a mutiny, and once the people rise up, they'll band together and execute Liam as a tyrant. With that said, let's have all the honorable soldiers gather here. As the guide snapped his fingers, black smoke generated from his body before dispersing into the surroundings. The guide then took off his hat before opening the door between dimensions. Even when I'm doing things like this, you're still sending feelings of gratitude to me. Makes me want to hurl. We'll be gone for a little while, Liam, so make sure to put on a spectacular show for me the next time I come here. He decided to leave a little earlier than planned because Liam's gratitude was disgusting, and so the guide left the world as it was. I was about to reach my mid-40s. It was around the time where you'd normally start having a midlife crisis. But in this world, people of this age were just about to be recognized as adults. I had continued to live a normal life. I lived normally, worked normally, studied normally, and trained normally. The reason? I was preparing for a disaster to strike. Or rather, I felt that it was weird that I haven't suffered at all in this life. As I was just about to finish my day's work, Amaji gave me a new report. Master, Nias Karen, the technology lieutenant of the 7th Weapons Factory, is looking to meet with you. It seems like she wants to confirm Avid's condition. Nias? The intelligent beauty technology lieutenant that had an amazing body. Why so suddenly? The inspection on Avid is probably an excuse. Their main goal seems to be the sale of weapons from their factory. The Empire sure was a rough place. It was just too large. It was impossible for them to micromanage every little thing. While it's true that the factories were run by the empire, it seems that nobles were still allowed to purchase weapons from them for their personal needs. Normally, you wouldn't be able to buy such things, or at least they'd put restrictions. But their conditions were too loose. And so, it was relatively easy to purchase arsenals. Can we even afford something like this given our financial situation? They're probably going to try to sell us a new battleship or something. Between a new car and a used car, which can we afford? It was something like that. At present, the majority of the ships used by the Banfield House are 1 generation old, while the main aircrafts were built with the lowest specs possible to keep down the prices. It was all I needed though, so I wasn't complaining. I'd rather sell something to the Imperial Army rather than buy something from them. The 7th Weapons Factory is insinuated to have quite advanced technology while having problematic designs, which only increases the price since it's based on the specs. In turn, it seems they have a delicate reputation in the Empire. Conversely, the 3rd Weapons Factory is quite well balanced in both performance and design, making it one of the more popular factories. Is that so? It doesn't have anything to do with me, so I didn't really care. I decided it should be fine to at least see her, so I gave my reply and started towards the reception room. Neos was already waiting for me by the time I entered the reception room. Today she wasn't in her usual uniform. This one had a skirt. The length of the skirt was abnormally short. Perhaps noticing my line of sight, Amagi started muttering. That skirt is in violation of the Imperial Army's dress code. After sitting down on the sofa across from Neos, I could understand why. I could see her underwear from this angle. After I finished my greetings, Neos began to talk. You've really made it big. I was wrong about you, my lord. That's fine and all. But what did you really come here for? She was complimenting me, but I didn't feel like I've become that big of a deal yet. Was it just lip service? Yes, I was thinking about checking on Avit's condition because there were many engineers who were curious about what had happened to that child. I could see her thigh gap every now and then from the inside of her skirt. Cut the crap. I hear you wanted to sell something to me? The territory was more developed than it used to be, and tax revenue was increasing. Knowing that much, various people had already come to me seeking out trade deals. One of them was Neos. Neos' expression suddenly turned serious. She then started operating a tablet-like object, from which a stereoscopic image suddenly displayed itself around me. I'm here to ask you to purchase battleships and weapons built by the 7th Weapons Factory. The 3D images of the battleships floating around me showcased how they took up less space while being more powerful than the previous generation. Their prices were unbelievable. This wasn't on the level of a new car, it was a whole new meaning of the word expensive. Aren't these more expensive than the standard prices? There's also the fact that they're better ships. They're different from the mass-produced ships that only display the minimum specs required, so of course the price is higher. For just one of these new ships, I'd be able to purchase 3 to 5 second-hand ships. I didn't feel any need to buy any separately. While Amagi was examining the video, she added, when buying goods from the Empire's weapon factories we also need to pay taxes. These aren't the tax-included prices. I glared at Neos, and she turned away while giving a troubled laugh. That may be so, but I can guarantee their performance. The latest models have been improved in various ways. For example, this cruiser. More night can be docked there than ever before, and its specs as a battleship are, in short, what they were trying to sell to me was the latest version of the conventional models. Certainly, their capabilities were great, but why didn't you sell them to the Imperial Army? We lost the trial, so they decided to commission another factory. Because competition in an intergalactic empire was fierce, it seems that each fleet has the right to decide which factory they want to buy from. So they constantly hold inspections as tests. However, it looks like the 7th Weapons Factory lost all the inspections and wasn't chosen by any of them. Amagi calmly asked, are there any problems besides performance? Neos looked like she was about to cry. They're both easy to produce and maintain as well. However, they're smaller than before, and we were rejected because they didn't like the design. They said that they had cheap interiors. Certainly, nobles do tend to hold appearances as a high priority. Although there were ordinary people in the upper ranks of the army, there was an overwhelmingly higher number of nobles. So when given the choice of design, as long as the performance difference wasn't that noticeable, of course they'd choose the one that appealed to them more. If I was in the same position, I'd choose the cheaper one with a better design as well. I mean, there's no real difference in specs. Though from time to time there do seem to be eccentrics who only focus on either design or performance. I'm not really one of them, but if I had to say which was more important, I'd definitely say performance was a little better. So how about it, my lord? 200. No, even 100 is fine. You can take out a loan, so why not consider purchasing it? It seems like the 7th weapons factory is desperate now. They probably didn't expect to lose the trials. Amagi, can you show me the battleships of the other factories? As you wish. Around Amagi, the battleships from the other weapon factories were displayed in reduced 3D images. Compared to the ships built at the other factories, the ones of the 7th weapons factory truly were weapons. They gave off quite the burly feeling. However, there was also something about them that set off red flags in my head. I had a bad feeling about them and I didn't like it. The ships of the other factories had the same basic structure and had more refined designs. It was obvious. This was a loss. Certainly their specs were good, but they just looked straight up awful. In comparison, the battleships of the 3rd weapons factory were especially cool. Amagi, isn't this fine? Let's buy this ship. Master, that's a flagship class battleship. We need the permission of the Empire to buy those, and the Banfields don't have that right. It looks like I'm not allowed to buy anything of the flagship class that's over 2,000 meters long. I guess I didn't have a choice but to buy a battleship that was smaller than 1,000 meters. I see. The reasons being, the taxes that should have been paid to the Empire have been late until just recently. I finally had enough leeway to pay them, but the Empire's response was cold. Even if I did try to get a permit, it's likely I'd have to pay for all the taxes that have been missed first. In that case, why don't we go with this one? It's cooler than what we have now. I pointed at an 800-meter class. It was a bit small, but I thought it'd be a good purchase. They'll get you in touch with them right away. While I was having that conversation in front of Nias, her voice rose up shrilly in response. Please wait for one moment. I'm really in trouble here. I sighed. WHYD, you give up on design. It's because performance is more important. If the difference in specs isn't that different, then of course I'd choose the one with the better design. The interiors are also pretty cheesy looking, or rather they give off a malicious feeling. Without cutting corners, they're just plain bad. That's because maintenance will become more difficult. Looking more and more desperate, Nias started to take off her coat jacket. The underpants that I could see through her white shirt gave off the feeling of somebody that had been working hard for a long time. Wasn't that a matching set? Nias seemed to be emphasizing her chest with her arms. Looking at that, I remembered the extravagant increase of unfamiliar underwear that was kept in my wife's drawers. As I dropped my shoulders, Nias looked like she was about to cry. Why are you so disappointed? Weren't you ogling my chest the last time I came? Yeah, I did, but I'm not really feeling it anymore. Even though my wife constantly refused to spice up our nightlife, for some reason, she seemed to be getting an increasing amount of flashy and skimpy underwear. Those were the first signs that I started to think that she was having an affair. Opening her white shirt to expose more cleavage, Nias even started to make poses in order to appeal to me. The person in question was seriously embarrassed and completely flushed red. Wow, Nias, you must really want to make this sale. She gave an awkward smile while clumsily doing something that just barely passed as a pose. Something did come to mind after seeing a cool beauty force herself to do something that she absolutely wasn't used to. It was that she looked really, really pitiful. I understand, I'll buy it. You said you needed me to purchase 200 ships? If possible, I'd appreciate it if you could buy 300. The number from before had increased. Wasn't she being a bit too shrewd? She was like the universe's most disappointing Venus flytrap. Can we afford it, Amagi? Amagi immediately did the calculations and confirmed, we can do it if we reduce the number of ships scheduled to be purchased. In the long run, this isn't a waste, so it should be okay to invest in them. When I turned back to look at Nias, she had already clasped her hands together in happiness. I understand. I'll buy it. We can change the design ourselves anyway. We can just throw covers or whatever for the exterior, and while it might cost a bit more, the interiors can be renovated. Now that she had regained her composure, Nias pushed up her glasses slightly with her fingertips to correct their position. There's no point in the design. You really should at least do the bare minimum, or else you'll never win an inspection. Reminded of how they had continued to lose the inspections, Nias dropped her shoulder and started hugging her knees on top of the table she was now sitting on. I can see your underwear again, so can you stop already? Stop sitting on my table. Amagi had an exasperated look on her face. It looks like she's the kind of person who's generally disappointing except when they're working. She was beautiful, but she was a pitiful kind of beauty. In the end, I finished this bit of business and left the details to Amagi, eventually leaving the room more tired than I thought I'd be. Brian was walking down the mansion corridor. There he could overhear someone engrossed in a conversation. Is that the visitor, Nias? He thought it was rude to eavesdrop, but he felt that Neos, who was making a secret call to someone, was suspicious. When he listened in, how about it? I was able to get him to buy 300 units. Apparently, she was conversing with some youth from the 7th Weapons Factory. But it's also with a commission to alter the design, right? The top brass is going to be angry. There wasn't any other choice. He wouldn't buy anything otherwise. The younger voice sounded slightly appalled. In any case, I can't believe a straight-laced worker like you was actually able to charm a deal like this out. Did you have something to blackmail him with? It's nothing like that. He's completely obsessed with me. I was able to wear him down with my seduction skills today as well. Really? And maybe, definitely. I saw it with my own eyes. If that's the case, then you should have sold him more. I'm not that mean, there was no need to. Rather, why aren't you being nicer to me? I just completed a business deal with my charms. You only sold 300 units, right? We were hoping for double that amount. I did my best. The atmosphere was subtle, but Brian was shocked. Lord Liam is stuck in a honey trap. Brian couldn't help but feel uneasy about Liam, who had just made a large purchase from a Venus flytrap. Chapter 7. Evil Merchant Ekigoya 1. Merchants are the source of all evil. Isn't everyone familiar with this phrase? When spoken, what comes to mind is the image of Ekigoya in the past. They were an extremely group with their own story. Putting that aside, I need one. Before I can truly become an evil lord, I need my own Ekigoya. So let me introduce my purveyor. The plump, bearded man who had the appearance of an evil merchant was Thomas Henfry. After I had continued to maintain and develop my territory, he had approached me intending to do business. He was a trader who dealt with goods between planets. At first, I didn't think there was a real need for traveling merchants in this time of outer space travel, but let me explain why I was wrong. They fly between planets, not only those within the Empire, but also to ones in other star countries to buy and sell goods. They buy the resources and goods exclusively found in planets far away, and sell them in my territory. The opposite is also true, but this man is different from the others who do business in my land. He's my house's exclusive merchant. In other words, he's a very important merchant for my territory and the Banfield family. While we were sitting down together in the reception room, I asked Thomas, "Did you bring the yellow candies that I like?" After wiping his sweat, Thomas presented to me a box filled to the brim with gold bars. "Of course I have. Please enjoy them, my lord." As I picked them up, the heavy weight in my hands brought a smile to my face. Ekigoya merchants truly are the source of all evil. Gnome Lord, my group is called the Henfry Chamber of Commerce. I've told you this multiple times already. As our usual greetings finished, I felt that he was truly an evil merchant worthy of me. I needed corrupt merchants like Thomas by my side. After receiving his bribe, I started listening to his request. "So what do you need?" "I'm planning to make a venture into some dangerous space, and I want you to lend me your fleet." He wanted me to lend my military to him as his guards. I wondered what evil scheme he cooked up that required military force to finish. That said, I think I can allow it as long as it's profitable. "Are you going to a dangerous place?" "The destination itself isn't dangerous, but there are many pirate bases en route the journey there. There have been several reports of merchants getting attacked every day. Space pirates are annoying. They also had a few screws loose. Some of them had collected various weapons over time. Some were deserters who had fled from the army, and some were thieves who had run away after stealing military tech. Sometimes they even found work as mercenaries due to their abundant battle experience. They're very annoying." After turning my eyes toward Amagi, who was behind me, I could feel that she knew what I wanted to say. "If it's only for about 3 months, then we'll be able to prepare 100 ships immediately. If you require more than that, then some preparations will need to be made first." I smiled and turned back to Thomas. "Or so she says. Is that fine, Thomas?" Thomas looked relieved and gave a meaningful smile while looking a little embarrassed. "Wow, I don't know how I can repay you. No, I'll make sure to prepare more yellow candies for you next time." "Of course, but more importantly, will we be able to turn a profit?" If he hesitated here, then there'd be no point in lending my forces. "Unquestionably." "That's great. Amagi, begin the preparations immediately." "Understood. Do your best to make me money, my Ekigoya." "No, my Henfry Chamber of Commerce." The large transport ship used by Thomas was anchored at the spaceport. After going up from Earth to space, Thomas was going through the zero-gravity path to board his ship. He was surrounded by subordinates and bodyguards as he carried his luggage. One of his men opened their mouth while looking over at the planet in the distance. "The Banfield House's territory sure has developed a lot recently. That young man sure is amazing to be able to do so much at his age. As Thomas did business, he always seemed to stop by the Banfield house's territory in particular. It wasn't that amazing to be honest, but it was definitely a planet with an exponential level of growth in recent decades. He's a little different from the aristocrats I've seen so far. He's a little strange, but he's a fine lord. Thomas thought the boy who always asked for yellow candies was quite the virtuous ruler. His surroundings didn't deny this statement. The men seemed to be a little confused, though why would he ask for gold? It isn't a particularly scarce resource in his territory, is it? Thomas was also perplexed. I wonder that too, why gold? Well, it's fine. I tried giving him mithril and magic gems a while ago, but he seemed dissatisfied. As I thought, gold really makes Hemi the happiest. Maybe he doesn't know. The reason why Liam always asked for gold is because he considered gold to be valuable and expensive. Why was gold expensive though? That's because back on Earth there was only a limited supply of it. In this universe it was still expensive, but there were even golden planets where it could be found in large quantities. More precious resources and metals exist out there. Mithril is a classic example of this. Silver, which carries holy power, is considered to be far more valuable and rarer than gold as well. No, he's a modest person. To only take such small bribes in exchange for the multitude of benefits that came with being the Banfield house's exclusive merchant. He felt tears coming to his eyes at the thought. After a little bit more walking, they had finally arrived at the ship. He really is trying his best. Thomas looked back at the spaceport. The newly built port was well equipped with the latest facilities for use. It was a great boon for merchants. I heard that he was investing the majority of the taxes he's received, and it seems to be true. It's quite amazing how much he accomplished while still so young. If the Banfield house wasn't in so much debt, just how amazing would this place be by now? As Thomas finished muttering these words, he turned his eyes back to his men. This deal is more dangerous than our usual commissions, but it's essential for the Banfield house. Let's earn a lot of money and contribute to them as the merchants we are. This deal was truly important for the Banfields, but Thomas wasn't doing it for the house itself. Thomas was going this far because he wanted to help Liam. He wasn't actually an evil merchant. It's hard to predict what the future will be like. In my previous live's childhood, I did dream about flying cars in the distant future as technology developed. But after I grew up, my common sense let me know that flying cars weren't something I should expect to happen. Even though I now live in an intergalactic empire, the skyscraper view that could be seen from a luxury hotel wasn't that different from my last life. Actually, it was developing farther than the big city I lived in before. Even though there were many high-rise buildings, it didn't feel crowded. Not to mention the rich nature that was around us, there were many undeveloped lands. My territory has barely developed at all, as I complained. Amagi, who was nearby, corrected me. Master, compared to when you first took over, this territory has grown quite significantly. It's actually developing at a rate that most people would doubt to be true if they saw the data. But those are just numbers, and that wasn't what I meant. I was talking about something different, about how terrible my people's fashion sense is. I had tried to walk around the area before, and I was completely shocked by what I saw. People had started to spend more money recently. So it's natural that I'd be able to see cute girls out shopping, right? But that was completely wrong. You see, in my current incarnation, I found myself liking girls with a more modest fashion sense. Even though I was looking for a girl with a prim and proper feeling, everyone was dressed like Jairus 2 or Gothic Lolitas. 3. I can't find myself attracted to them because they're not my type. We haven't had any progress there at all. It may be good to introduce fashion courses. We can use the premise of this is something that appeals to the Lord's tastes. In the first place, fashion culture was different from planet to planet. They may all have the common point called the Empire behind them, but they were still all different. Some planets advocated my ideals, but there were also many of them whose fashion culture just looked weird in my eyes. How am I supposed to change this anyways? Should I start bringing in fashion designers and start investing in aesthetic fields? Nothing will happen if I just leave this alone. Despite the trends in casual fashion, in the beaches of my territory the prevailing swimsuits used were the kinds that were like full-length tights. As if I'll let such a stupid situation be. There's no way I'll admit to ruling over such a place. Let's bring in some models and celebrities. If the people look at a beautiful person, they'll definitely be influenced. Amagi had a somewhat perplexed face on while I started talking about the various plans I had in mind. This maid android was quite expressive. Unfortunately, we're still in heavy debt. Tax revenues have increased along with the development, but in turn the repayment amounts are rising as well. The massive debt held by the Banfield house. I can't do a lot of things that I want just because of this. A spaceship flew through the sky when I turned towards the window. Just when did I get used to such futuristic sights? Certainly, it's slowly been changing ever since I took control at the age of 5, but I couldn't help but feel slightly lonely. The door to another dimension opened. When the guide returned to this universe and confirmed the present conditions, he almost swore. At this rate, he's not going to do anything. The guide thought that Liam would be indulging himself by now, but he hasn't laid his hands on any women or drunken a single drop of alcohol. He didn't drink liquor in regards to his physical age. And he avoided women because of his past trauma, and due to the fact that none of them were to his liking. So before he realized it, he was just working as a good lord normally. This is disappointing. I thought this might happen, but I still feel slightly betrayed. Why are you being such a virtuous lord when you were aiming to become an evil one? Also, he's been living a frugal life with little luxuries because he still had the economic sense of his past life. Even worse, he was okay with his life as it was. A part of his mind was even subconsciously sending feelings of gratitude to the guide. And even worse than that was Liam's popularity among the people, and the gratitude they emitted towards him. This was also revolting for the guide. Stomachaches, headaches, nausea, dizziness, the guide could endure all of it, but he'd still prefer to avoid it if he could. It was okay for Liam to be grateful, because eventually, the guide was going to throw Liam away to the deepest pits of despair and show him hell. That said, the guide couldn't allow things to continue to progress as they were. If left unchecked, then Liam's life would end with him remembered as a great ruler. This is disappointing. I would have been happy if all of this was just on the surface, all a lie. The people would build up resentment against the tyrant Liam. The soldiers would revolt. The beautiful girls he gathered would try to murder him. The guide wanted to see such scenes. However, the people regarded him highly as both a good person due to his humble life and previous lives' values. The soldiers were loyal and would accept doing anything under the thought process of if it's for the Lord's sake. And lastly, there weren't any ladies surrounding him at all. It was impossible to manipulate human relationships to stimulate his past traumas. Was he really aiming to become an evil lord? The guide had enough. It was time to throw away the disappointing Liam. At the very least, let's burn up the territory he worked so hard to build up. Let's see, there are some convenient space pirates here. Black smoke started emitting from the annoyed guide as he melted into his surroundings. He started speaking sorrowfully, at least bring me some entertainment at the very end. Liam. Until then, enjoy the view that you've built. On a planet far, far away from the Banfield territory. Multiple missiles were hitting the planet, making one big explosion after another. The ground was burned to ashes. On top of it all was a single pirate who laughed in his insanity as the literal world burned in front of him. Commander of a pirate fleet more than 30,000 ships strong, was the pirate known as Goz. He was a savage-looking man, sporting a full beard and a bruised head. He was a giant of swollen muscles. Goz's mouth was arched in a wide smile. He drank from the bottle held in his left hand as he watched the moment that an uncountable amount of lives disappeared. It's always moments like this when booze tastes the best, right? The pirates who feared Goz laughed in affirmation, though one of them squeaked out a question. Boss, did we have to go this far? In response, Goz put his abnormally large hand on the questioning pirate's head. Some of the pirates in the vicinity averted their eyes. Others watched on with expressions that said, "What an idiot. Who allowed you to give me your opinion? Don't get in the way of my fun. Wait, boss. Please dash." The subordinate's head was crushed in Goz's grip. His hand was immediately washed by some of his other goons. As the men began to clear the body and start cleaning, Goz continued to watch the planet he had just destroyed on the ship's monitor. There was a golden box carefully gripped in his clean right hand. He kept the box with the unique pattern and crest on his person at all times. Usually, he just carried it in a special holster. He stroked the box over and over again, as if it were about to disappear into thin air. It was an easy job this time as well. One after another, he had decimated planets and had taken many lives. This man was a true villain. Goz himself was particularly infamous, having huge bounties placed on his head. If you could somehow defeat Goz and his pirates, you'd be able to earn enough money that you wouldn't be able to finish spending even if you just goofed around for a lifetime. He was the very definition of dangerous. One of Goz's deputy officers called out to him. "We made a killing this time as well. So what are you going to do with that lady now? Have you found a replacement yet, now that she's just about broken?" Goz smiled. The teeth in that smile were yellow and filthy. True, I have played with her for a long time, so hopefully I can find some new toys soon. The deputy officer smiled back. As someone who became the boss toy, it's amazing she was able to keep her sense of self that long. In any case, should I chart out our next destination? Immediately after Goes started to ponder this question, black smoke started to coil around him. It was only for an instant. If you blinked you wouldn't have even seen it. No, wait, boss? Come to think of it, there was a territory that became prosperous recently. I think it was ruled by a brat named Banfield. I heard he was a virtuous ruler, some hard-working lord in a backwater planet. The deputy officer recalled the rumors. Yeah, I've heard that a lot recently, so our next prey is the Banfield territory. Goes feared no nobles. After all, Goes had an immense amount of resources. What makes things fun is to break people worth breaking. And it's been a while since we've gone after anyone that could end my boredom. The deputy officer replied, then it's confirmed. Our next prey is the Banfield brat. Goes licked his lips. I'll do my best to thoroughly break that kid. Chapter 8. Space Pirate. I was almost 50 years old. The age where I would officially be recognized as an adult was quickly approaching. As I lazily spent my days in the mansion, that's when I noticed it. Don't you think that it's pretty unhealthy that I've barely gone outside the mansion, despite how I've reincarnated into a mind-boggling sci-fi universe? I was working in the office at the moment. Amagi answered my question while helping me process documents, completely ignoring the fact I just told her about my reincarnation. This maid's power level sure was high. There's no problem as long as you exercise properly within the mansion grounds, and besides, it's safer here. I don't recommend moving around. Was she still angry about how I snuck out last time? I left to pick up some cute girls, but couldn't find anyone to my tastes. So what should I do, really? Normally, when one thinks about being an evil lord, you'd imagine them indulging themselves in liquor and beautiful women. With alcohol, I can't help feel guilty drinking it in my current body, and it doesn't even taste that good. As for women, I'm not really into them because nobody so far has been able to beat Amagi, who's like the representation of my ideals. Huh? Then is there any need to do these things at all? No, wait. I'm aiming to be an evil lord in the future. How can I just give up now? It's no problem to me even if you're called an evil lord. But what is it exactly that you want to do, master? Raise the taxes and oppress the people? Temporary tax revenue will rise, but I can't recommend it right now because it'll be detrimental in the long run. Let's consider the current state of the territory and alter the taxes accordingly. Depending on the situation, lowering the tax will increase the populace's tendency to buy things, which in turn may even increase tax revenues. This is so wrong. I don't want to follow economic logic like this. I want to step on others. I don't want to be from the side that's taken from. I want to go and be the one that takes things away. I don't want to hear such sensible opinions. I want to go and do things by abusing my power and using violence. That's it. I'll just start taking things from the people. I'll become the Lord of Thieves. Who cares about tax revenues? Yeah, let's find a beautiful girl in the local area and kidnap her. In this case, let's make sure to find someone who has a fashion sense to my liking. Amagi replied immediately to my plan. All the current staff who work at the mansion are people who fit the appearance criteria that you've advocated for, excluding the technology department. Everyone working here has been specifically selected from the local populace. Hearing this gave me a headache. Certainly, those who worked in the mansion did tend to have a good sense for fashion. But Amagi seemed to be misunderstanding something. Are you perhaps feeling that it's about time you took a bride? No, that's not what I'm feeling at all. I'm sure there are many women who would be willing. If you prefer men, we could arrange for that instead. No, I don't. Amagi, did you really think I was interested in men? And if I was going to lay my hands on the people, I didn't want to do it to those who came willingly. What makes things fun is the way they resist. Then, let's bring in the local entertainers from the territory. Forcing the populace to relieve my boredom is definitely evil. Master, the entertainment industry is still developing. Either way, at your call, many people would happily volunteer. Though there's nobody really that talented nearby? Or did you wish to bring in someone from outside the territory? Outside? As in somebody from another territory? I want to be treated like a king by my people. If they're from another place, they won't have any sense of fealty for me. That suggestion is rejected because I didn't have the leeway to cause friction with the nearby territories yet. They'll start messing with them after we build up some more strength. Why not just relax for now? Master, you are the head of the Banfield house. That's not just a statement, you are literally the king of an entire galaxy, well, the king of one planet. No, even if that's true, don't say it. I mean, isn't that kind of pathetic? To only be in control of one planet when my territory actually covers an entire galaxy. This isn't my fault. This as well is because of my father and grandfather. Damn it, is it that difficult to become an evil lord? To rub salt in the wound, Amagi reminded me of a fundamental problem we still haven't fixed. There's also the matter with the unresolved debt that we have. Our debt, no matter how far the territory develops, it'll still be held down because of this stupid debt. And if I just ignore it, various troubles will follow, so I have to pay it back. If I delay the payments any more than they already have been, then the collectors will come knocking at my door. I started to recall my previous lives' trauma. Dang it, is there no way to easily repay this thing? Unfortunately not, so let's just continue making steady payments. As we continue to show our good faith, the other party may even begin to suddenly. A call interrupted us. It was Brian. That's rare. Doesn't he always come by the office personally when he has something to say? When I accepted the call, his image projected itself into the air. Lord Liam, we're in danger. Space pirates have declared war on the Banfield house. Aren't they a little too lawful to be pirates? The building for government offices in my territory was a huge skyscraper. Many officials that worked to manage the area were stationed here. It was the kind of place that ID rarely visit. I'm supposed to be the person in power, but if I had a problem, usually ID just send one of my subordinates here in my place. However, it looks like this time things need to be done in person. All the important individuals were gathered in the conference room, fervently talking about the pirates' declaration of war and their demands. An official in a suit was checking its contents while in a state of high tension. The pirates are demanding we hand over goods and hostages. The hostages themselves being limited to beautiful women. I looked at the list of precious metals they demanded, but they were at quantities I couldn't possibly provide. And the hostages were limited to beauties. This infuriated me. Why did I have to give them what belonged to me? It wasn't just officials, military personnel were here too. My lord, should we negotiate with the pirates, or should we prepare for battle? The soldiers were annoyed by the officials' discussion, which didn't seem to be getting anywhere. Our opponent is Goes. He's someone that even has a bounty on his head. He was a villainous pirate worth an immense amount of money. If we could somehow defeat his fleet, we'd receive huge rewards in return. So what should we do? Is it even possible to win? Even if we gather all our forces, the Banfield House only has 8,000 ships in total, while the Goes fleet numbers at 30,000. There's also the difference in quality of arms. Numbers aren't everything, and we can't just surrender without doing anything. What about the people? So you say, but can't we just run away? Just what the hell are you saying? I looked over Go's bounty as the officials' and soldiers' argument became more fierce. As a noble, it's not really that big of a deal for me. It wasn't an ignorable amount, but wasn't really enough to say I'd be rich once obtained. I almost didn't notice it happening. What's this? Everything suddenly became quiet, and when I looked up, the surrounding scene was really weird. Even though they were arguing so violently before, now they weren't even moving. They looked completely frozen. What is this? It looked like time had stopped. That's when I heard a nostalgic voice. Okay, now we should have a little time. This is tiring, but it has been a long time since we've seen each other. In this life you're called Liam, right? I turned around, and there the guide standing before me. It has been a long time, and what's with this situation? Pirates are attacking. Didn't he promise that I'd be able to live a happy life? The other party seemed to have guessed what I was asking as he answered. Liam, you're misunderstanding the situation. This is my present for you. Present? Yes, you're going to become an adult in this universe soon, right? Before that happened, I wanted to give you one final gift before your debut as an official part of the aristocracy. Am I correct in saying that your territory is currently in debt? I could only give a bitter response. Yeah, it is. I'm still making payments for it even today. I knew this, so I manipulated some pirates who had huge amounts of treasure over to your land. Liam, if you can beat them, all of it will be yours. Mine? The guide stepped closer to me and grabbed my hands. Yes, if you can defeat them, then you'll receive many honors and a huge amount of treasure. Their leader even has a considerably large bounty on his head. This is my gift for you. Is that so? As I started to smile, the guide gave me his own smile in turn. Thanks for being understanding. Well, with this, the after-sale service is over, so I have to bid you farewell. After taking off his top hat and giving a bow, a door suddenly manifested behind the guide. As usual, I couldn't see any of his features besides his mouth. I bowed back to him in response. Thank you, truly, for everything. And I gave him my thanks. I felt like his smile disappeared for a second there, but it was back to normal almost immediately. This is my job after all. After the guide left through the door, it completely disappeared. Immediately after, the noisy argument resumed. I tried to stand up in the most conspicuous way possible. As everyone's eyes gathered on me, I started to give my orders. This is a good chance, so let's attack them first. Everyone, begin preparations for battle. The soldiers were at a loss. The officials were as well. My lord, that's reckless. This is a famous pirate we're talking about here. Many knights have already been slain by his hands, and we have none of the Banfield knights remaining. I didn't have any of the previous generation's vassals. And even if I did, there was no guarantee that they would even make a difference. But that wasn't a problem. If the guide set everything up, then there's no way I'd lose. Who cares about that? I told you what we're going to do, so make the preparations already. The officials looked like they still had something to say, but stayed quiet, probably remembering how I purged a large number of them before. That's right, just shut up and follow my orders. Those that follow me are treated favorably, and those that don't will be killed. Well, use everything we've got in this battle, so somebody start transporting Avid. The commander of my forces, one of the men expelled by the Imperial Army, objected to this. Do you plan to sortie as well, my lord? I'll leave with the first ships, it's decided. Don't worry, I'm only making these orders because I believe in us. From now on, let's just have some fun hunting pirates. There's nothing more fun than playing a game you already know you're going to win. These pirates came all this way to deliver their huge treasure troves to me. So of course I'd have to respond in kind. Prepare for battle. Brian was unnaturally restless at the mansion. Emoji gave her report. Avid has been successfully transported to the spaceport. It will soon be loaded onto the battleship that Master will board. Brain hung his head. What bad luck. Just when the territory finally started to become lively again, some space pirates just had to invade. Emoji's expression didn't change, but she still seemed to be worried. We haven't lost yet, and Master's decision wasn't wrong. From the information we've gathered about the pirate, even if we surrendered it'd be meaningless. Brian shook his head. It's too late. What are we going to do once they start flooding into the territory with those numbers? The main army was contacted and they dispatched a force in response to the pirates trespassing on Imperial space. Their response was swift, but it still didn't look like they'd be able to make it in time. In the worst-case scenario, the territory will be destroyed, and the army will arrive to nothing but a decimated planet that the pirates had already fled from. Brian lamented. The Banfield name was finally about to regain its former glory. If only Lord Liam was born a century earlier. Brian, who had placed his hopes on Liam, despised the pirates. At the spaceport, there was a man watching the Banfield fleet rally together. It was the guide. He was wearing what he normally did even in outer space. Standing on top of the spaceport, he began to laugh at the figure of Liam, who was preparing to meet the ship's captain. To think he actually believed me when I told him this was a present. Well, as long as it's interesting. I actually hope he gets captured and turns into another one of that barbarian's toys. The guide didn't tell Liam something important. He didn't tell him that Go's pirate fleet was far stronger than ordinary ones. The secret to its strength lay in the box that Go's kept on him at all times. It was an infinite source of funding for Go's. With an endless amount of resources to spare, Go's was always prepared. Even the quality of their equipment wasn't that inferior compared to the latest models. In this battle, the overwhelming number of pirates had the advantage. And he was so grateful to me too. I'm looking forward to seeing how this changes later. His thanks will digress into hate, and all the things that make him happy will burn in front of him as he drowns in grief and despair. This will surely satisfy me. The guide was waiting for Liam's life to fall apart. Outside of his field of view, a small light appeared and headed towards Avid, who was being loaded onto the battleship. Quickly entered inside of Avid before the guide noticed. Still ignorant, the guide started spreading his arms wide. What kind of result will you show me? Liam, it's time for you to learn the truth of your reincarnation. Why did he bring Liam into this universe? Why was his previous life so full of pain? The time the guide had waited for, the moment that he could tell Liam everything, had arrived. Chapter 9. First battle. After rallying our forces, we had about 5,000 ships on our side. Even if we had a total of 8,000 ships, many of them were unoperationable because of problems that had arisen during maintenance. However, even if we were only able to gather this many, things should still be fine. On one of the space battleship's bridges, I was sitting down in a specially prepared chair. The bridge was currently in a frenzy. There were over 100 people scrambling to do their jobs. Because it was also the flagship I personally boarded, more personnel were assigned to it than normal. While I looked over all those hard-working people, are we ready for departure yet? The militants looked slightly peeved, but they couldn't go against me, their lord. This was a normal relationship dynamic scene in the Empire. We're still getting some last-minute preparations done, and my lord, are you sure about this? I looked at the concerned expression of the commander, and I couldn't help but feel how pitiful he was. This war was a joke. Our victory was a matter of course. I alone smiled with this knowledge. The treasures and bounties possessed by the pirates were within my grasp. More importantly, do those pirates have a lot of money? The soldiers turned to look at each other. Well, they do. And to think all of that is going to be mine soon. I can't wait. The soldiers all stared at me while I laughed. Go's fleet. As you would have expected, the biggest ship was Go's personal flagship. Ever since he used it to destroy an entire star country, it became his favorite ship of all. It was remodeled to the point that you could barely make out its original appearance. Relaxing at the bridge, Go's was laughing as he placed on his forehead. They're coming out to meet us? Looks like the kid has some fight in him. The surrounding pirates joined in on the laughter. Go's pirate fleet has never lost. He thought they'd surrender, as most small frontier houses with limited forces normally did. I have to admit they have spirit. Let the men know if they capture the brat alive, it'll double their share. I want that kid as my next toy. The adjutant was smiling. You truly are charismatic, boss. Well, it's interesting to have an immature brat as my opponent for once. Once this is over, I wonder how we should enjoy the people who had just lost their last line of defense. Go still hasn't had enough. He was a man who has lost count of how many lives he has taken over the decades. All of this was due to the golden box that he owned, the alchemy box. Simply put, it was an artifact capable of producing gold from any substance except for living organisms. It was a piece of lost technology that was impossible to recreate. In addition to gold, it was even capable of producing mithril and adamantium. It was an artifact of dreams. Now then, how about we teach what true war is to a boy who knows nothing? The pirates believed that victory was assured. Anybody would think that. They outnumbered their enemy sixfold. Even if they didn't plan anything, they'd be sure to win in a head-on fight. Only a few days had passed before we were set to collide with the pirates. I listened to the commander's orders as I relaxed in my chair. I could barely hear him now. The chair I sat on was comfortable to a frightening degree. No matter how I sat, my back didn't hurt at all. I could totally sleep there if I wanted to. The moment I closed my eyes, my lights would be out. Over the last several days we had worked out our plans and formations. Everyone was assigned to the role they were most suited to, so I left it all to the military personnel while I just watched. Just by looking at things as they were, it didn't look like the battle was going to begin anytime soon. I understood that everyone thought that this was a last-ditch struggle of resistance due to the difference in numbers. I called out to a soldier who was stationed nearby. When will it start? My lord, it has already started. Once battles reach scales this large, you can't just run recklessly into the blackness of space. We're already struggling enough as it is. I can't even see the enemy. When considering the size of the universe, please imagine that the distance the enemy is at could already be considered fairly close. Come to think of it, it's true that I never really learned anything about war. While I did study many things in the educational capsules, I did neglect a military education. Even while knowing that, the soldier explained how ignorant I was without remorse. He really didn't mince his words, but I did like how honestly he spoke. Because he was working for my sake, it'll allow him at least that much. It looks like the two forces were slowly reducing the distance as they repositioned the armies to counter each other. It seems that checking the radars and instruments for the enemy was considered part of the battle as well. With that said, how many days was this supposed to go on? The commander was scowling. With forces that large, the number of soldiers the enemy has is nothing to scoff at. Seeing how firm the pirates were caused him to frown. I turned to the soldier again. By his behavior, he was probably someone that used to be in the Imperial Army. Is the battlefield always like this? It's not very common, even the commander is growing a bit impatient. Slowly close in while adjusting formations. Although they weren't at visual distances, they had confirmed each other's presence. Then the operator shouted, "We're experiencing jamming interference. Enemies have been spotted closing in directly above the fleet. Their number, 500 strong. Apparently 500 pirate ships are attacking from above the fleet. somehow able to avoid the detection of our radars. The commander immediately starts sending out orders. So they're making the first move? Prepare for interception. Don't let them out of your sight. Our fleet quickly altered our formation into a bow pointed straight up and ready for the incoming pirates. The commander had a bitter look on his face. I turned to the soldier. Isn't it bad for the enemy to spread out his forces like that? They did it in order to break our formation. No matter how quickly we intercept it, we'll be leaving ourselves open to retaliation for a moment. It would have been better if they just charged at us with all their forces at the beginning. As I complained, the enemy started coming into view, and the soldiers' faces started to drop. My lord, those aren't pirates. Well, I guess they are. They're people who have stooped to the level of piracy. They didn't look like imperial ships, so they must be the fleet of another nation. They're the people who were assaulting us. For some reason, the thought made me a little sad. Did he make the people who've surrendered to him in the past into his strike force? If they were going to send out jamming signals, I wish they had done so sooner. Orders given after communication interference occurs is bound to be delayed before the units can carry them out. They sent these people knowing this. If you can't talk to your soldiers, you can't give out orders. To put it simply, it's a lot of trouble. Still, those who've been put in charge of this assault are probably disposable pieces in the pirates' viewpoint. As the pirates started to attack, we shot back to intercept. We were shooting each other with beams and lasers. I couldn't help but think that the flashes of colored light that zoomed through space were a bit beautiful. Goz was clapping his hands at the bridge. Now what are you going to do, kid? Are your pieces ready? 500 allied ships had been repelled, but Goz didn't really care. He had overwhelming dominant forces. If he had only lost that much, then it didn't really matter. His adjutant smiled as well. Boss, the enemy should be confused now. It's time to go on the attack. The Banfield House's fleet should have been thrown into confusion due to their jamming attack by now. Goz decided his orders after hearing the adjutant's report. The pirates had already closed the distance while the enemy was fighting the 500 abandoned pawns. So Goz shouted in a brave voice, "Okay, boys, it's time for an assault. It's only natural for pirates to attack a panicking enemy. All of them were going to attack at once." The crew was a little surprised, but they didn't seem to mind. They thought the enemy would be in a state of panic. However, trap mines were waiting for the ships that charged forward. Several dozen pirate ships were caught up in the explosion and were destroyed. What a clever little trick. He wondered if they knew that this was going to happen. But even this wasn't that much to worry about. The adjutant wasn't panicking either. They're doing better than I thought. Goz started laughing. It wouldn't be any fun if they couldn't do at least this much. Either way, this much damage is immediately after the Vanguard was caught in another enemy attack and exploded. What? Goz turned to his adjutant and asked for a report. Although his aide seemed a little shaken up, he was able to squeak out a reply. It looks like their fleet is really well trained. Even the quality of their equipment isn't that bad. Goz slammed his hands against his armrest. They couldn't grasp the situation of the enemy because of the jamming signals, but apparently the fleet they assaulted had already regained their formation and was waiting for them. I don't want to admit it, but I guess that's what happened. They still outnumbered them though. Pirate and enemy clashed and started attacking each other. The enemy's vanguard was fighting hard. But even then, none of their attacks came close to Goz's ship. They had defense-focused escort ships protecting his surroundings. So he had no fear of an enemy attack. Press on fast. We have the number advantage, so gang up on them. They were putting up a small but intense resistance. Goz saw it as something only to that degree. Actually, the distance from the Banfield fleet was shrinking. They could already predict the enemy's next moves. If it's like any normal aristocrat's private army, then at least one of them will try to run away. If one ship runs away, then a chain reaction of desertions will occur and their fleet will collapse. Since it's easier to chase fleeing enemies, the adjutant was hoping it would happen. There's always a fraction that doesn't run away. We can mess with those ones as we wish. Understood, boss. The naively trained ships of lesser nobility were bound to desert a disadvantageous battle. Because they lacked discipline. The Banfield House's forces only seemed like they were fighting together. The pirates' assault continued. As the battle progressed, the two noticed that something was wrong as they got closer. Goz stood up from his chair. What? Displayed on the monitor was the enemy fleet still fighting at maximum strength. What he saw was an enemy whose fleet didn't collapse. None of them had run. For some reason, they still haven't lost the will to fight. The adjutant was also surprised. They haven't run yet? No, they even closed the distance. Goz shouted at his amazed aide. Send out the mobile knights. Break their formation. The distance was reduced to the point in which humanoid weapons could participate in the battle. As if to ridicule his order, the enemy was already dispatching knights to attack their vanguard. "You're just a bony little brat. Don't get full of yourself. I'll catch you and make you my toy." Goes felt frustrated with Liam for the first time this battle. At the bridge, officers who stood near the commander were issuing instructions one after another. Staff members were also issued orders after confirming the current state of the battle. In any case, things were pretty hectic. One soldier, the man who stood near Liam, turned towards the now empty chair. He really sortied. This puzzled him. He was assigned to the flagship to be Liam's aide, but Liam himself said that he was going to join the battle in his mobile knight. He ordered the commander to charge, and left to join the battlefield. As such, now the commander and the surrounding staff were in a panic. "Send some knights out immediately. Don't let anyone harm the Lord. The escort knights are still being prepped for launch." "What the hell are you doing?" The bridge was in a state of disarray because of Liam. The soldiers looked up at the monitor and took in the sight of Avid that was projected there. "That's a knight?" The special existence known as knights are different from the usual military officer. In layman's terms, they have almost superhuman abilities. Knights were the result of many years of physical and mental strengthening from education capsules from an early age, which general soldiers didn't have access to. Even basic movements would be different if the two piloted the same machine. If they fought, it'd be impossible for the general soldier to make up the difference in ability and win. Projected in the monitor, Avid was dual-wielding a bazooka in its left hand and a sword in its right. After slicing through a pirate knight who approached with its sword, it proceeded to destroy a pirate ship with its bazooka. After throwing away its bazooka, Avid stretched its arm into a magic circle nearby and pulled out a new armament. It was space magic, where a large number of weapons had been pre-stored. Weapons were pulled out and used one after another as it went wild. Liam's voice could be heard mixed in amongst the noise. "Ah ha 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 ha. Just try and stop me." The soldier wiped the sweat that fell by his cheek as he watched the figure of Liam cutting down enemies and sinking pirate ships without hesitation. Just what kind of life did he live? Liam, who still hasn't had his coming-of-age ceremony, was still only a child in this universe's perception. Such a child was fighting pirates with glee. The commander who overheard this approached the soldier. "Does he scare you?" "See, Commander. Please excuse me." The commander sat down in his chair saying, "Don't bother," to the soldier who had suddenly stretched his back, stiff. If he wasn't born a nobleman, would he have been an ordinary child? "What do you mean?" The commander whispered. "When he was only 5 years of age, he was abandoned by his parents and forced to rule a territory that was on the brink of collapse on the frontier. Somehow, he managed to develop the devastated land, only for him to be forced to do battle with pirates to protect it. I really want to see how this kid will grow up in the future." The commander started to grumble. "I want my children to serve this lord as well." Many former imperial soldiers were forced into Liam's territory. Lots of them were inflexible and stubborn people. People too serious were relegated there. People too virtuous were relegated there. People who refused bribes were relegated there. Simply put, there were many kinds of serious people gathered there. The reason why is because the guide wanted to gather people who would oppose Liam, who was aiming to be an evil lord. From the perspective of one of such individuals, the lord named Liam was, "After I was expelled from the army, I was regretting my life, but look at things now. I didn't think I would find a lord worth serving all the way out here." The surrounding soldiers agreed. Yes, he's truly a virtuous ruler indeed. The figure of the person who stood at the front lines and fought. To the soldiers standing behind it, it was truly an inspiring sight to see. It was inefficient for the leader to spearhead the charge in battle. However, it raised morale and instilled the idea that as long as we follow this person, we can win. Liam had shown them this form without even realizing it. Chapter 10. School of the One Flash's founder/successor, I'm invincible. Inside of Avid's cockpit. I grabbed the controls and I couldn't stop laughing. This is it. This is what I'm talking about. To subjugate my enemies with overwhelming power. My opponents were pirates. I felt intoxicated with power from killing all these people that seemed to overlap with the debt collectors from my previous life. Not the side of those who had things taken from them. I was finally on the side of those who took things away from others. My heart was full. Enemies started flocking towards Avid, which was larger than regular knights and was cutting down pirates one after another. "You're annoying me." As I shouted that, innumerable magic circles manifested around Avid. The weapons I had stored in the space magic beforehand started materializing. Homing missiles were fired concurrently from missile pods, tracking down the attackers. Some of the flocking enemies fled, but they were soon caught and died in the resulting explosion. After that, several knights appeared from the explosion's smoke. Their movements were different from the other aircrafts. Pirate knights? People who were originally knights, but had fallen to piracy and crime were called pirate knights. Most pirates were just gangsters and thugs, so pirate knights were a very valuable force for pirates. The shields mounted on Avid's shoulders repelled enemy beams and lasers. They created an energy field that wrapped around the airframe, so those attacks never even reached me. Even if they shot physical projectiles like bullets, Avid's armor was sturdy enough to take it. I'm not even using any cheats. Well, melee weapons on the other hand, I started taking evasive maneuvers against the pirate knights who had switched to swords and other melee weapons, dodging them as they came, one after another. Even the amazing Avid would be damaged by a knight's swing if they hit. So I avoided them because it felt like I was damaging a new car. I don't like scratching the things I just bought. As I kept dodging my opponents, I threw away my bazooka and started shooting at them with a rifle. You might be better than normal pirates, but you're still nothing. As Avid passed by the approaching pirate knights, they'd suddenly be split into two. Nice response. The attacking pirate knights were cut down immediately after they approached. Rising slash, downward slash, reverse slash, counter one. Just by shaking my sword a little, my enemies were suddenly severed into pieces and exploded. One of them somehow received my attack with his blade. Instead of attacking again, I accepted his power challenge against Avid. The other party's voice came through the comm lines now that we made contact. What the hell did you just do? What school is that? Many knights are trained in specific martial schools. To learn martial arts is the foundation for all knights. However, the other party was puzzled and couldn't recognize my school. Among the pirate knights, his was the one with the best movements. I was also kinda interested in him and replied back. It's the School of the One Flash, founded by Swordmaster Yasushi. Do you recognize it? I've never heard of that school, nor of a swordmaster by that name. Must be some no-name sword-style trash. My anger flared up, so I threw away my rifle and smashed the pirate knight's head in with my left hand. You say I belong to a no-name school? They'll crush you and broaden the name of the One Flash. After destroying what remained of the enemy with my left arm, I steered Avid towards a nearby pirate ship. The boosters spurted out fire as beams of light shot out towards the accelerating Avid. I pushed through the rain of optical weapons and smashed through the pirate ship, breaking straight through its armor and hull. After damaging it that much, the ship detonated in a fiery blast behind me. Goes watched as a black knight emerged unscathed from an exploding battleship. What the hell is that guy? Who's piloting that knight? He was sure that it had to be a well-known and famous knight. First he thought it was just a large, outdated airframe, but his pirate knights were being slain without even being able to lay a finger on it. Goes was growing impatient and could feel a cold sweat coming on. Who is he? The adjutant exclaimed out in surprise after hearing his subordinates report. It's their leader. The Lord of the Banfield House is piloting that knight. It's Liam Sarah Banfield himself. What? Goes shook with anger as he listened to the report. Impossible. How can the high-end bodyguards I hired be losing to a single kid? The mobile knights I gave them weren't cheap either. High-grade pirate knights who charged exponential prices for their services. Even the mobile knights given to them were aircraft stolen from the Empire and bought at the black market. Their appearances may have changed, but they were still better than the normal aircrafts used by ordinary pirates. It was unbelievable that a single knight could take them all on. No, this is a chance. Their general is on the front lines. Idiot, only a fool would leap into the middle of an army alone. Surround him and beat him down. Ghost saw his men in a vain light. Pirates couldn't be trusted by anyone, not even other pirates. All the more so when so many of them had already been killed. The more likely they thought they couldn't win, the more likely they were to betray him, so he had to end this quickly. Watching the scene displayed on the monitor from his chair, Ghost took in the sight of a battalion of pirates swarming towards the single knight, as per his instructions. But no way. Ghost couldn't believe his eyes. The pirates that flocked towards Liam were all bisected in an instant. They started to explode from the very action of approaching Liam. Even pirate ships were divided as if this were some sort of horrible nightmare. This can't be. How can one knight be so strong? What is this? What the hell is that guy? He couldn't believe it. If things kept going as they were, then Liam was on a direct collision course with Ghost's flagship. As it punched through another pirate ship, Allied ships started to recklessly fire at the Black Knight, completely missing their target while hitting each other. Idiots! Stop that immediately. Let the mobile knights fight him. The pirates were afraid of the lone Liam. But their enemy wasn't Liam alone. The adjutant started shouting, "Boss! Enemy forces incoming!" The enemies who were desperately trying to catch up to Liam were in a cone-like formation. They broke through the pirates who were already starting to panic. The pirates were confused due to the unexpected high-level skill of the attackers and their lack of hesitation. Goes smashed his fist into his chair's armrest. Useless, all of them. He had a multitude of pirates under his command, but they were all untrained ruffians. If things even looked slightly dangerous, their lines would easily collapse. Goes racked his brain. The current flow can't be allowed to continue. At this rate we'll lose, then he'll have no choice but to run away and save myself. I didn't think they'd be this strong. There were many benefits for being the boss of a large pirate fleet, but conversely, it was also very troublesome having only thugs and criminals follow him. Ghost called over his adjutant and started to whisper, "We're running, call over whoever you think is trustworthy. Everyone else is disposable." The adjutant was surprised at first, but soon gave a look of understanding. Understood. Ghost's flagship started to retreat, its surrounding escort ships following closely behind. After we get away, he'll start sending assassins to the brat. I can still win this, I have an unlimited number of chances. His adjutant started shouting as Goes unconsciously gripped the alchemy box. "What the hell are you doing? Continue the retreat." The pirate in charge of steering cried out in response, "What about our allies?" The adjutant hissed, "They're already dead anyway, so press forward. The enemy will be here soon." They were behaving like cowards who wanted to escape as quickly as possible. It was a course of action that they would never take normally. So why would they do this? They were simply scared of Liam, who was quickly approaching at high speeds. The sight of Liam, who was an unstoppable force on the battlefield, was terrifying. "And caught you." The flagship shook violently with a sudden impact. Liam's avid had landed on the hull. I caught up to the fleeing enemy flagship and attacked them. After landing on the ship's hull, I destroyed the turret that was aiming at Avid. Are the pirates afraid of shooting at their leader's ship? The pirates were hesitant to attack the flagship, which I was boldly striding across. Are some of them trying to run away? I immediately went on to shoot down any ships that tried to desert the battle, blocking their escape route. Well, it's too late to get away now. They'll get every last one of you, and then all of your treasures will be mine. As I started blocking their chance to escape, the pirates suddenly started to scatter everywhere. When my allies finally caught up, they opened up their comm lines despite all the static. "My lord, are you all right? Forget about me, chase them down. Leave 1,000 ships for defense and hunt down the pirates with the rest. Don't let a single one get away, and ignore any pleas of surrender. Kill them all." Understood. My allies will pursue the pirates who run away. Even if they try to escape into space, a swift pursuit should still be able to defeat the majority of them. As one of the friendly ships approached the enemy flagship, they started prepping a landing force. I forced open the ship's hatch and entered into the pirate knight's hangar. A mobile knight was standing ready and fired a rocket at me, but I wasn't worried. Nothing at that level could destroy Avid. "Hey, you scratched the paint job." The pirates standing nearby started shaking in fear after seeing Avid emerge from the explosion almost unscathed. Holding up their rifles, the space suit-wearing pirates started to open fire. "You're annoying." As a section of Avid's armor opened up, and a laser was discharged that practically incinerated the pirates into ashes. After finishing off the last knight, I let out a breath and started putting on my helmet. My pilot suit also doubled as a set of power armor. I attached my sword to my belt and grabbed the rifle I had stored in Avid before boarding the pirate ship. "Now where do you keep your treasure?" As I said that, multiple small allied ships started entering the hangar. After safely landing, the troops started gathering around me. The soldiers were all dressed in combat-focused powered suits that were far taller and intimidating than my own. Seeing people dressed like that act so respectful towards me was really amusing. "Lord Liam, we've come to retrieve you. Though it looks like they're here to bring me back. Rejected, I'm coming too. It's too dangerous. We may have already pushed them this far, but if the enemy has any suicide bombers, or why would someone that was running for their life turn into a suicide bomber? I'm leaving, follow me if you want." After refusing the grumbling landing squad, I entered the ship. The land squadron dressed in their powered suits quickly took formation around me. I was impressed. The insides of a pirate ship were more beautiful than what I thought it'd be like. Because gravity controls were offline, we had to go through the corridors in a weightless state. Luckily, I was wearing special boots that allowed me to walk normally even in these conditions. The surprisingly beautiful Lord Liam, please don't push on ahead by yourself. As we proceeded forward, I sensed some feelings of hostility and forced everyone to stop. Now, where are you hiding? Found you. Near the corner of the passage. I could feel some presences waiting for us there. Additionally, I could feel more of them lurking around in the ceiling. At my order, my men shot their rifles upwards, creating multiple holes. From there, red blood started to flow out, suspended in the air, so they were probably dead. My subordinates started to make a commotion. They were wearing suits that our sensors couldn't detect. I can't believe that pirates have such expensive equipment. Apparently, the equipment they wore was pretty costly. In other words, they have a lot of money. This is good. The treasure hunt is getting more fun. Let's hurry. The pirates hiding around the corner jumped out, probably hoping to catch us by surprise. So I stepped forward. In front of me were multiple pirate knights wearing powered suits. You got careless. They leaped forward. Protect Lord Liam. I pushed my subordinates out of the way. Unnecessary. I just continued walking, ignoring the pirate knights approaching me. My subordinates seemed stunned, so I turned back towards them. What are you doing? Hurry up. Wait. It's danger. The pirate knights who were charging towards me were suddenly propelled towards the walls and floor, their bodies severed into pieces. Lord Liam, what did you just do? I answered my bewildered subordinates, like it was the most obvious thing in the universe. I cut them. Even this much was nothing compared to what my master could do. At his level, you wouldn't even be able to see him draw his sword. My slashes are nowhere close to the peaks he's reached. I could still remember them now. My slashes were the equivalent to child's play in comparison. The landing squad behind me quieted down at my response. That's right, fear me. Fear and worship me, your master. The landing squad gazed at Liam's back as he marched forward. If a child wore a powered suit, of course they'd look a little bigger. But Liam's back looked far larger than that. It was imposing. How could we protect a knight like that? Usually when confronting knights, all soldiers could do is lament their bad luck. Conversely, if they had a reliable knight on their side, they'd be crying in happiness for their good luck. One of the soldiers muttered, "He hasn't even had his coming-of-age ceremony yet. Isn't our Lord actually an amazing person?" They knew that he was highly skilled in domestic and governmental affairs. But there was no way to know how far he honed his martial skills. In the first place, normally people didn't start a military education until they reached adulthood. There was no way for them to know. Oh, he's definitely strong. Does he really look that prodigious to you? The one that spoke was a soldier natively from the Banfield territory. Because he had never left the territory before, he had no idea how amazing Liam actually was. But even if he wasn't strong, wouldn't the image of their lord personally fighting on the front lines for them cut an inspiring figure? They definitely thought so,